Just stop talking. I feel like we should open the episode.
My brain is so fried.
We should open the episode with you having duct tape on your mouth. Like, if you watch the beginning of the show, you'll know why.
Oh, man.
Oh, Lord.
That was great. I just can't believe that came out of my mouth.
As opposed to coming in your mouth?
No, we're not doing this today. We have way too much content to move through. We cannot let this happen.
I don't think I've ever seen him laugh this hard.
Look at him red as a beet.
Man, beating it.
No, that was what? You had to actually work for that one. That wasn't even close. Sure. Can leave chemistry behind.
Clink, clank, clink, clink, clink,
Clink, clang, clink, clank, clung. Hello and welcome to Happy Hour, the Strange Gaming Network weekly news show that involves video games and tech news. I am one of your hosts, Brent Metcalf, the jester head himself,
Kitchen witch.
alongside to my right, because he's not rude to interrupt me,
John. Handsome John P.
and to the left.
Apparently the dick master.
You better believe it.
Is
Mark
it the
Plover.
Dick Master now? It's not the Smasher.
And of course, we have to introduce our special guest, so John, take it from here.
Right now, we are currently drinking Furu Shake. It's actually got some coconut and pineapple
What is it?
notes to it. It's a sake.
Okay.
What we call sake, but that just is alcohol in Japanese. Just don't go over to Japan and start asking for sake because they're just going to be really confused. It's like you go into a restaurant
Here's some
saying,
vodka.
I want alcohol.
Here's some whiskey.
What kind of alcohol? I want alcohol. What do you not understand? So, yeah. So specifically, this is a...
What is this then? Like, how would you actually like?
Osake.
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 Oh, sake. So
I believe.
it is
You're
a
wrong.
unfiltered, which means it does have like kind of like the sediment, like
You can see
milkiness.
in this bottle here that it's not very clear. I'm
this
probably
is a
you have to
white
zoom
glass.
in.
Clear
Like,
as mud.
Just go ahead and just zoom in. You pinch your screen.
Because you can totally do
You
that.
can do that on YouTube. It's not a problem.
And you can definitely
It's
do that on
very-
SoundCloud too. By the way.
Very clear. If you're listening, just pinch your phone and zoom in. You'll see the bottle.
You know what it kind of looks like?
Don't even go there.
No,
what's
what is
the
wrong with
second? What's the second bottle?
It is called Mura.
You're so proud of yourself, aren't you? You're so proud of yourself. Like, oh, I got him.
It's called
Semen
Mura.
is the joke. That's what he was going for. Semen.
It is very
This
white
is also
and
an
cloudy.
unfiltered whiskey. Oh my god, we got whiskey on the brain. This is an unfiltered sake. It is called Mountain. This is apparently a very bold tasting sake. It's actually paired well with spicy things. It is also more of a earthy toned sake, so you're not going to get a lot of fruit notes per se. But it is going to be a full, like apparently it's pretty potent too. So we need to be careful how we finish this off because if we end up finishing both bottles, there's a good chance I'm sleeping here tonight.
That's
There-
okay. It'll just make the topic that much more interesting.
It is a beefy show today. So
Yeah.
what I find interesting about sake in general is always how you want it to be sweeter than it actually is, or at least you think it's going to be. So
Yeah.
this cloudy one, which has fruit notes in the beginning, but it's a very savory flavor on the back end. This, I imagine, is not going to have very much sweetness whatsoever. It's going to be very savory.
Yes.
That's pretty much what a majority of sake tastes like. This is different than what you probably get at your average restaurant because it's non-filtered, therefore cloudy, and therefore typically served cold.
Yes.
Indeed.
Also, the hot sake tends to be filtered, like we talked about earlier. They also tend to be more fruity in nature as well. The beauty about why I like cold sake is I feel like I get more of the taste from it because most people overheat on the sake, like you go to the store or not store to the restaurants.
This would be boiling lava hot.
Yeah, like but you put it in your mouth and you're like, I can't taste anything anymore. So all this food's gonna be great. This actually right now.
Oh my God, where'd it go? I'm just kidding. Sorry.
The interesting part about the Furu though is that the fruit notes are there, but they're not overpowering to the point where it makes it almost too sweet that you can't enjoy it. So,
Dear viewer, this is an interesting point here, simply because you'll notice how much John actually talked about his special guest this week. This is very rare because it's not normally this long.
I am a huge fan of whiskey, and I'm a huge fan of port wines, which the other port wine I didn't talk about because, well, I didn't add it yet. I didn't have my full experience. And honestly, I still like my Taylor Flaggate. I mean,
It's your homegirl.
He's my homegirl.
Yeah.
She's my homegirl.
You don't have
We
to
don't
assume it's
judge.
gender. Yeah.
But that 20 year, that finish, I actually finished it. It was Friday.
Yeah.
When you guys went to dinner. I watched Netflix and then drank that bottle.
That sounds like a wonderful evening.
It
in.
was an amazing
This
evening.
is
I
what-
didn't leave the couch.
This
until
is
I had
what
to
happens when you turn 30. That sounds like a great night. What does everybody think about the Fruger right now? We'll come back to this when we crack it,
Yeah.
but enjoying it quite a bit.
I think it's
good.
going to be, it's a lot better than I expected it. I did expect it to be too fruity, and that's why I was like, this is experimental. Don't hate me for choosing this. This is something I haven't seen before.
No. I enjoy this though. I mean,
don't know why. It
it's
should be already.
it's a subtle fruity taste though. Like it's not like overpoweringly sweet,
Yeah.
overpoweringly sweet that you would get actually out of having the fruit or a regular wine with other
Correct.
fruit flavors mixed in kind of thing.
I
Or
agree. I
beer
always-
even.
I love sake with the savory back palate. It always makes me feel happy.
That me?
Yes,
I
that's
literally just put that on mute, by the way. I don't understand what's going on with my phone right now.
Just turn it off.
Well, they don't want to hear why I get. People like to talk to me about
People
this.
like to
I
do
think they actually
something.
want to talk about the show. You
All
guys
I know
are
is whatever's on
killing
that
yourself.
phone
Never
is
mind.
not important. But do you know what is important?
The
important
I fumbled through that one pretty well. I think we're going to start off with... We're going to start off with Mark because we're going to go into the Apple event. I actually normally curate this a little bit better in which we line it up beforehand, but that one I didn't tell anybody where I was going, so it was really confusing.
Honestly, the news articles are kind of all over the place here. because
Correct.
There's so much that has happened in this last week.
Speaking of which, if you are in for the long haul, please be prepared. This is going to be an extra long episode. GDC is our topic of the show. That's not a surprise. We just
Seriously, it was the
want
biggest
to
event, yeah.
make sure that we cover as much as we can and talk about as much as we can about the event. Therefore, regardless of the length, we will go on because the show must go on. If that is a problem for you, you can always come back later. YouTube does this handy little thing where it like saves where you are. And if you're on the podcast, just pause, come back, man.
Yeah.
Moving on, dispatcher.
We're here for
Anyway,
you.
so for those of you who didn't know, because we didn't know until today, Apple had an event. I don't even know what it was called.
Weird that a fruit has an event.
Indeed. It's also weird that Fruit is actually talking about having a video streaming service,
Yeah.
a game streaming service, a credit card, and what was the other big one?
We want your money.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Give us
I mean,
all of it.
Oh,
that and they're upgrading to an Apple TV Plus system.
correct.
They sold the hardware. Now they want you to buy the software.
Wait,
Yeah.
what?
It's
Or the app, or whatever.
so the funny part is so I was watching sort of the live like CNN tech feed roll past as they were talking about the event from beginning to end, and
watched
all of the
CNN.
predictions on this were like, oh yeah, it's going to be a normal event since Tim Cook took over. The Apple stock's going to tank a few points, and then product's going to release, and then it's going to skyrocket. Like it always does. It's 8%, whatever. And Roku usually takes a couple point bump whenever that happens. Ironically, so exactly what happened. For like the first hour, Roku took a nice I don't know 2-point bump, that kind of thing in their stock price, and Apple took a 2-point hit. And then they started talking about all of their video streaming services at towards the end of it, because they're implementing everything together.
Okay.
Like a third-party content is coming in almost as an application to that third-party content, but they're linking everything in directly.
Yeah.
You want to search for something, it searches everything at once. Everything you have access to. Stars, Showtime, HBO, CBS, Epix, but the list goes on.
So if I wanna-
Cinemax, anything.
Yeah. So if I want to find Detective Pikachu when it comes out, it'll search and tell me it's on Netflix.
Right.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's kind of the
Because there's
the
always that
idea.
stuff that we don't know that's there. Like you end up finding it because you do a search, but you don't.
Yeah.
I think there was one time we ended up watching something on Amazon, and then we realized it was on Netflix, and I was like,
After we had already paid for it.
Yeah.
I will say I do think this is funny because we discussed this earlier.
Yeah.
But we moved from a singular platform that had all this information in a menu to multiple platforms, and now we need a menu again to figure it out.
Yep. So the big thing here, though, is that Apple's streaming service that they're coming out with has several large names involved.
Okay.
Steven Spielberg is coming
Okay.
out with a couple with 2 series, I believe.
Okay.
M. Night Shyamalan's being involved.
Interesting.
Oprah has a multi-year contract
That's a big
with
one.
Apple.
That's a big one.
And what was the other big name?
The big O, if you will.
Yeah.
"You get a skull. You get a skull."
Everybody here gets humpback
Jennifer-
whales.
Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon have a series that they're starting.
Wow.
Never happened to her.
Jennifer Aniston?
Mm-mm.
Reese Witherspoon? She was in a movie recently, actually.
J.J. Abrams was the other big name.
Ooh, old
wow.
JJ.
Yeah, J.J. Abrams. Like they all have series that they're coming out with. And by
They
the way,
weren't
this is
joking.
all. This is like within like roughly $1 billion that Apple has shoveled since the beginning of 2018 into original content.
So glad they used their pocket change to do that.
I know, it's really nice of them.
Seriously, but
Tim Cook's like, oh, I found this on the couch. We should start a streaming service.
Just wrap them all up. Go tell Spielberg I own him.
yeah, but like there was so
Out
much.
the closet and chase. Yes.
Oh wow.
Yes, Tim.
Screamer be like a T-Rex.
I don't.
Whew, where our brains go.
Yeah.
A lot of different places. Anyway, so
By
Apple's,
the way, if getting drunk on sake means it's a happy drunk.
Yeah.
Normally.
but anyway, after this happened, anyway, like the complete opposite of predictions happened because I guess nobody really expected big names to get thrown around like
Yeah.
this,
Not
kind
like
of thing.
that. No.
Yeah, exactly. So Roku's stock actually took a hit because of it by the end of this the series, and Apple stock shot.
I can imagine. I mean, they're offering a lot here. I mean, it's not just a streaming service, but
So the next one, anyway, is the credit card system, or the credit card service, anyway, that'll integrate directly with their Apple Pay system. So they actually are working with Goldman Sachs to offer a direct credit card, like a completely online digital credit card experience, basically, through your phone. So you can pay with Apple Pay, and you can get a physical card, but for security purposes, actually, because the card number is irrelevant to the user. The idea is that because you can pay with Apple Pay, you can get to that information online, I guess, to use it, or pay with systems that have integrated with Apple Pay. But the card itself has no numbers, has no expiration date listed, has no security code on it, just has a magnetic strip.
They were one of
in
the
a chip.
Yeah, and a trip.
Yeah,
They were one of the financial companies that had to be bailed out in 2008, right?
correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh man, I totally would trust that.
Yeah.
Thanks. Good choice, Apple.
Now,
I can't imagine literally any other company would be willing to do it, though.
I mean, granted, it's got Apple's name on it.
I
So
don't-
there's a lot riding
So,
on
I mean,
this.
you go to the smaller banks like Synchrony or Ally, maybe. But you talk about Bank of America, Wells Fargo.
they wouldn't
yeah.
do it.
No,
No.
they wouldn't touch that with a 10
Well, they also had to be built out. I do find this interesting though because of the reward system tied to it.
Well, it's an international thing.
Oh,
Point-
which also-
right.
point-wise.
So they have a 3-2-1 reward system anyway, where it's 1% back on purchases, 2% back on purchases done with Apple Pay, and I forget what the 3 is.
I don't know what the 3 is, but the 2 is because there's no credit card transaction fee. So they're like, screw it, we'll give it back to you. It's pretty smart.
Not bad,
Yeah.
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Someone made some money that day.
Yep.
But aside from the credit card,
Well, actually, I mean, the last, I guess there's the news piece, but the last one would roll into his.
it's
It is
yours
now
now.
yours.
It's yours.
Oh,
We're
is it?
discussing, yeah.
I didn't realize you were letting me have it.
We're consolidating because we share things around here. Okay.
There's a lot of fucking news.
It really is.
Yeah. I was about to say you had to do it.
Apple Arcade.
Apple Arcade. That's what we're talking
It's
about,
a
people.
big facade.
This is just going to be a gigantic cabinet you put in your living room, right?
Kind of.
Okay. well.
It's literally a physical Apple you put down, you plug an HDMI into it, and suddenly there's a video game.
Oh my God.
That's awesome.
Just go to your supermarket now. Just buy an Apple.
These little
Tesla make it?
fruit jokes just are unending.
Yeah.
So
Powers your house too, like a potato.
So the point of this is that games work on everything. iPhones, Apple TVs, Macs, iPads, like all of your Apple devices that you can.
What
play.
is it?
So it's not even really a game streaming service.
Yeah, that's
It's a games service. Like it's a store basically.
subscription model basically where you pay one annual fee and you get games available to you.
Did they give you a price point?
I didn't hear one.
No, they
I
did
bet
not.
they didn't.
They did not give one. No.
Because you know who else didn't give a price point? Google.
Yeah. Nobody.
Yeah, that's true. But the idea is that there's several games being thrown. There's several games being thrown into this already. They have over 100 titles, I guess, that they're getting ready to throw.
Yeah.
Into this. But my thing is,
Like high brand name titles though.
the point is you don't have to have internet for this because it's not a streaming service.
Yeah.
So what
You're
kind of games
downloading
can
it.
you really get that you can play on your iPhone and your Mac and your Apple TV? That kind of like it's gonna have to be basic arcade stuff. It's gonna which is
So-
why they named it Apple Arcade.
Not
I would imagine, but-
necessarily.
Yeah.
Because we have to look at there are quite a few games like Oceanhorn's a great example of a game that is a 3D like Zelda like that is playable on your phone and on Mac and on your Apple TV.
And
like
they actually have an exclusive with Oceanhorn 2.
yeah, Oceanhorn 2 is going to be in there.
Oh wow. Okay.
They have a couple of other large builders creators like Will Wright is involved. I totally can't remember the other two names.
I can't either.
But
I remember seeing them like, I'm not going to remember that.
They named quite a few people, and quite frankly, the list of games is more impressive. I will say, as phone technology gets better, the subscription service will get better because that means that you're going to be able to play much beefier games that have more interesting aspects to them. Overall,
another kicker apparently, they won't feature ads or in-app purchases.
Yeah.
That's a very specific feature, I guess, of Apple
I'm proud
Arcade.
of them for that, in a sense, but at the same time, I think eventually they're going to reverse that decision.
If it's a subscription model, then they've got an endless supply of income. I really don't think it'll matter.
If the amount of subscriptions can hold it.
Well, yeah. So the problem is eventually you end up hitting a critical mass like Netflix has, where your income literally halts until you either increase price or find some other stream of revenue there.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean that's the problem Netflix is having right now, unless they start investing.
I love how it's like, I'm making millions of dollars. This isn't enough. Whatever.
Kind of.
but
If you're not growing by 2% every year, you're going to get ate up.
Oh, that's what it is. Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy, his new studio, Mistwalker, is working on a game called Fantasian that'll be a part of it.
Yeah.
Beyond the Steel Sky, which actually looks really cool. Sonic Racing, Lego Brawls, which I assume is a Lego frickin' BR, which is going to make me die laughing so hard.
Why?
Ocean Horde 2, Knights of the Lost Realm, Projection First Light, and Enter the Construct. It looks like it's going to involve quite a few people. Like I said, Hironobu Sakaguchi, Will Wright, and then Ken Wong. It also appears that they're going to be working with Annapurna Interactive, Bassa Studios, Cartoon Network, Finji, Giant Squid. I love Giant Squid, and I love Annapurna. Clay Entertainment's great. Konami, Lego, Mistwalker. Yeah, I mean, they've got some great partners here.
Yeah, but my thing is like, if you're having to download it, that means your processing is not on their end. It's on yours. So you're still going to need... I mean, if the phone can handle it, your computer should.
Well, it just like the rest of the mobile platform, like you're going to be basically stuck with whatever your device is capable of handling.
Yeah, and that's what I'm kind of like. It's a tall order for that because there's a lot of... The specs between the phone, the pad, and the Mac itself are very different in my eyes.
Oh, they
I
are.
agree.
So
By a long shot.
I'm going to be really interested to see how Oceanhorn looks on the iPhone and the iPad and the computer and compare.
I think it'll be more it'll be more of a middle ground thing. Like, it's something that'll run heavy on maybe an iPhone or just under heavy enough, that you can play it for a couple of hours, that kind of thing on an iPhone. But it won't have much upscaling whenever it steps over to a Mac because you'll probably want the same kind of a gaming experience on both.
Yeah.
The thing that interests me the most is not only are you able to have this on multiple devices, so you enroll in Arcade, you have it on your Mac, Oceanhorn on your Mac, and then Oceanhorn on your phone, carries over your save.
Yeah, cloud save is definitely a big thing with them for iCloud.
Yeah.
So that's a huge deal because it's supposed to be seamless. As long as you are connected to some sort of internet, it just happens.
You should be able to shut down from one place and literally a couple seconds later open up from your phone or something like
you're
that. and walk
supposed
out
to
the door.
be able to... Never mind. That's a different thing.
Yep.
Move on.
Totally with you 100%.
Yep.
The only other thing that they listed off was Apple News Plus, which is actually kind of an interesting thing from my perspective because Apple News used to be this thing where you'd subscribe to individual subscription-based news outlets in Apple News. Now it's a single subscription service instead of it because the estimate was that you could pay $8,000+ or something like that for all of them, versus now you're paying $9.99 a month for everything.
Yeah, but I mean, you couldn't consume that much content if you wanted to, and a lot of it's redundant, which is what I think a lot of people are starting to notice with a lot of these.
But my
so they're
thing about
looking
this
for
is
more of purview, like perspective.
I wonder how much money Apple's actually going to lose on this. Like, there's got to be some sort of cost benefit for them to be able to make this shift because, I mean, realistically, I guess they weren't skimming a whole lot off the top versus now they're the direct, receiver of these funds to forward onto these news outlets.
Well, I like it because this funnel is perfect for someone that is like us. We're all very busy people. We like to have whatever little free time we have to be social. So, like everyone else probably does, just like me, I read my news on the toilet. And so I want to have to sit there forever looking through all of my stuff. It all goes into one place. I find it going.
Yeah. Okay.
Do my business, move on.
Kind of like a toilet bowl.
On the topic of news, I guess that does wrap up. That does wrap up Apple's
We're not
event
going to
page.
let you move forward because I have a further interjection because you wanted to talk about one more piece of Apple news.
I did. I wasn't sure which one to
That's where we're
blend
going.
into here.
We got it.
I was like,
I know.
crap, that was a great
There's
segue.
more.
No, so this one's just kind of a quick one. everyone for a long time now has been asking about Apple AirPower since like the first iPhone 10 came out.
Yeah.
Because wireless charging was sort of like the future, and we're getting rid of all the ports, and that's the idea, is that's the future. And Apple AirPower was something that was teased, a couple years ago. Like it's a big wireless charging pad that you can put your watch on, and your phone, and your tablet, even that kind of thing. And you can charge everything in one place. And they've since pushed that back now for several years, and they've just kind of stopped talking about it because it's not ready yet.
Damn Apple using the arcade to hide the real story.
So the problem is that there's been enough, I guess, talk about this, and everybody wants to ask, constantly, like, where is this? Where is this? Well, luckily, there's a website you can go to now that, will let you know, whether or not it's AirPower is out yet and available. It's literally isairpoweroutyet.com. One word, all lowercase. And, literally, it just has Tim Cook standing on a stage with the word "no" in the background. That's all it is. Somebody bought a URL, they secured it.
Yep.
Like they even spent the time to set up a security certificate on it.
They want Apple getting in there going,
and it
maybe
literally just says no.
That's your thumbnail. But instead of no, you put the GDC logo just to confuse everyone.
I'll just put the new. Well, I guess we'll get there. I don't want to talk about it yet. Well, actually, I guess,
That was some interesting news. We're really into news. Speaking of news, Mark.
Oh, that was so bad. Speaking of
it's going to be one of those, huh?
It's a long show. I got to save up. You don't want to blow your load too early.
Google,
Not my fault. I just pointed that out.
Google, for the last, I think it's 15 months now, or just over a year, has been talking about a news initiative specifically aimed at independent journalists anyway, and opening up abilities for small journalists and big journalists to come together, or to be able to have tools at their disposal to know what their viewers want to see and what kind of content they're actually viewing in real time.
Mm-hmm.
But in total, they've spent $300 million now on trying to, I guess, ramp up or revamp, systems like this, because you'd get, analytics from this, but it would, from their sites and whatnot, but it would be delayed. You wouldn't know what your viewers were looking at the time, or how many views you had gotten in a relatively short period of time. So now there is a consumer insight system, a real-time consumer insights, RCI, set up, that's content insights, real-time content insights. The idea is that it's literally a dashboard screen that they can look at to see what kind of content viewers are looking at that current moment, as well as how many views it's had in the last 30 minutes, to know what kind of content maybe they need to push on their site over top of something else.
Interesting.
And then what kind of content will show up in Google's news platform over top of something else from your outlet.
Okay.
So it gives them better insight into, I guess, what kind of content your viewers want to see, so they can sort of target a little bit better. Maybe I'd be interested to see if it goes geographic based, because that's something that would matter a little bit more to me. Like if you're a small independent journalist, more than likely you're covering topics that are related to you or your area.
Like a local,
so seeing things that your people from your town might be looking for would be more useful to you than anything else.
Yeah.
This is really fascinating and terrifying at the same time.
You're not wrong.
Because it's more of showing the content they think you want to see rather than what's actually important.
Correct.
Or possibly
the important.
If you're more of an international type person where you care about the whole big picture more than your local news, it might be actually counterproductive to you.
That's not true. I mean, that's true as well. Sorry, that's not.
It's not
wrong.
untrue.
He's saying you're lying.
I am a lie. I am not a liar, is what he said.
I said he's a lion. I do find this fascinating because it does give the little people, so to speak, and arguably the big people as well, information that they either were lacking because of resources or just more information in general, which is always good.
I mean, most of the larger
Have
companies have their
analytics.
own analytics suites that are built in, that kind of thing.
Correct.
Or have third-party companies they've integrated with,
But I fear this definitely creates a trend of like creating the content for the fad and not necessarily the content that needs to be out there. It's a hard argument to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's one that I think we have to continue to talk about because there's no easy solution.
Right.
When we're
I
talking
think
about
that would help during times like election.
yeah,
but that's even more of content of what do people want to see, not what's actually important about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the problem is like we have plenty of noise out there, and I feel like this just leads to a tool that helps create more noise.
Yeah, I'm curious how much clickbaity stuff is actually really going to show up in here rather than actual news.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, you could also hopefully, curtail it to more of a personal tone too. So you can say, oh, I want more of a local news right now,
Mhm.
as opposed to, national news or international news.
That would be the hope for sure. I would love to see more of the tool, like actually get a hands on if that were possible, because
It's gonna help like low level journalists, kind of get their name out too,
Yeah.
then not be like kind of swallowed up in the
Well, that's-
maelstrom of other people
That's
are
kind of
bigger
the
than them.
point of the revamp of Google News in the first place. So
Mhm.
it's definitely nice to see.
I agree. I would love to see how it actually pans out, and I'm sure we will in the next year or two, because these things take time. They're not quick. And it also seems like Google is actually trying to help the little people, but at the same time, they're also in trouble. Talk to us, John.
Again.
Again.
No.
Again.
Again. This is the third time.
Again. 4 now, yeah. So they got a lawsuit pushed against them now for $1.7 billion for a grand total of we don't know yet
Well,
because we
tell
don't
them
know.
from who? Tell them from who?
Oh, from the EU
Again.
Shocker.
They tend to be the
Round 3.
the international
Lost.
bulldog of Google. They're not letting them off the hook. They really this was a
Jeez.
10-year investigation that they
Good
were going.
God.
Yeah. So between the year of 2006 and 2016, Google was forcing companies of third party to pay more attention to their sources of ad revenue.
Yeah.
For their to be able to use their search function on their websites. So
I'm just saying, there's one company getting targeted here. I'm just saying, this is not like this is the third time I'm saying it or anything, but whatever.
all I know is it's Google, and they've only been sued for this past full 12 months. What,
Right.
$9 billion?
But my question is, what company's sitting on a giant pile of money and can afford to do it
Apple.
so much more?
Google.
Don't get me wrong. Google has the income to handle this. They're probably like,
'Cause
yes,
Apple's getting
this
sued, too.
hurts, but we'll take care of it, kind of thing. Apple, on the other hand, sitting on top of a giant mountain, looking down, and like, wow, that sucks.
Yeah. Hey, I'll pay for it. Ding.
Oh wow, $1.5 billion.
Found some more underneath the couch.
Let me move my left butt cheek real quick and chuck it at you.
So they don't know if they're going to appeal this one specifically. The other two have been appealed, and so no money has yet been paid on any of these fines. This $9.3 potential billion worth of fines. I think they're pretty guilty on this one because it's going to be kind of hard for them to say otherwise. Because if it was against their laws, it was against their laws.
Yeah.
They didn't change that function. That is what it is. But at the same time, with the other ones, I think there was a little bit more leeway. I think that they could fight on, which is why I think they said what they did.
Well, I also find it interesting because we have continued precedents being set from the EU against Google on all of these things.
Yeah.
I mean, you are right. They have a pile of money.
And again, no other company has been charged with this crap.
Well, I mean, to be fair, America is the only country that allows pharmaceuticals to actually show advertisements on TV. So, I mean, again, it's one of those cultural things where we look at it like, all right.
How am I going to know where to go to get my freaking erectile dysfunction medication if I don't get to see the commercial on television?
What,
I
the
can't
the
talk
one
to
where
a
they're
doctor.
holding hands between two tubs?
Of course.
And they're like, oh, this totally means I'm taking a medication to bone you later.
Mm-hmm. You better believe it.
Walking through the park, totally dreaming about boning you right
What do
now.
you think's in the sake?
It's.
Got a boner thinking about sake?
So what do you think?
I guess it depends on how excited you are about sake.
I think the sake's pretty excited though.
Here's your ED medication.
Anywho,
Yes, this is how this
this is
po-
very
this is how this
fascinating.
podcast
I
is
made
going.
one slide comment and you guys misinterpreted it.
You open
didn't
up
hear
that
me.
door, dude. I shut it. I shut that door, and you open it
That's
back
the
up.
first time you ever shut it. Speaking of keeping the garbage out, talk to us about the Epic Game Store.
So the Epic Game Store made
was
a
a good one.
fairly decent announcement that I think that makes sense, but at the same time, I'm like, why waste it? They're not going to be peddling their porn or bloatware
So here's the key thing, though. Why are they not doing this?
because they think they're better than Steam.
No, because they're not going to use an automated system. They're going to use human
Oh.
curators
Oh.
for their store and community management. And
Not like Steam.
Interesting.
I find that fascinating because nobody else is doing this.
Yep.
Literally nobody else is doing this. Like Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo have the most tentative threads of what they call like, hey, don't pass this line because it shouldn't be. Does the game break the system? That's fine. You're good. Go ahead.
It's the line. It's the difference of a line in the sand versus a literal brick wall.
Yes, correct.
See, it's always funny because I was looking, I'm like, man, but sex sells. Why are you going to let all that money go?
I mean, it makes sense for them when you're looking at 2019 and the backlash that Steam has gotten. And backlash is kind of a weird word because
it's light.
Because it is slight. You are correct. But I think, they already are seen as an anti-consumer.
This was looked at back
storefront.
in 2016, just talking about the porn and bloatware thing.
Absolutely.
As of relevance. So, and I actually went back and looked at a bunch of these comments. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
But I went back to look at some of these comments, and some people made some reasonable exercises, but most of them were a state of, oh, my 8-year-old's going to be using this and they use it more. And I'm like, and they're like, and you're not watching your child do anything with your credit card and just playing on the internet? That sounds like a reasonable parent.
Yes.
That I've never understood. Parental controls are a thing. You just have to take, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour to look at it.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
And not only that,
Set
but
it
it's
up
like,
one
you can't
time.
use my credit card without me accessing the ability for you to buy something.
Yeah, because a lot of them have passwords you set like over top of your children.
Yes. Not only that,
not that hard.
you as a parent should be consistently and constantly looking at what your child is playing.
And if
like,
Momo hasn't taught you anything.
oh my God, that whole ordeal.
Yeah.
But no, I find this interesting, less from the sex issue, but
Yeah.
more of the bloatware, because the Apple and Android stores are full of it. PlayStation Store has gotten worse since the launch of PS4.
Yeah.
Xbox and Nintendo have gotten worse since the launch of their new consoles as well.
I will say Apple does a better job because, again, they have their own human wall.
So they do have a human wall, but the problem is that human wall has a very low barrier of entry, so they allow a lot
That's
of
fair.
games that are just nonsense.
And there's a lot of replications. It's a lot of stuff that just doesn't need to be
Literally copying and pasting
Which
and
is
changing.
funny because that's actually in Apple's terms of service that you can't have a duplicate of something else or a replication
Yeah.
of something else.
Well,
It has to be significantly different.
guess what?
What
I
the
know.
level
They
of
failed.
It happened.
a level of significance, not a significant barrier.
I only know that because I've had an app that got declined because it was
This huckster over here thinking that he could just copy someone else's app.
actually it was an Apple app. We were trying to build an app to spoof phone calls, so it had to look like the Apple call screen. So literally all I did was change all the icons out from iOS to Android icons. And then they said, yeah, sure, that looks fine. All the colors, the layout, the coloring, the distorted background, all it was the same. But
That
you know,
human
whatever.
wall working really well over there.
Seriously.
Wow. That's hilarious.
I do think we're not going to know for a while, but seemingly looking at the Epic Store now compared to Steam and their brand new storefronts, I understand that. But
And
just
they're trying to differentiate too.
looking at their top 10 and their weekly sales and what they're going through compared to Steam, it's pretty obvious that they're trying to make sure that only a consistent level of games come in. Not necessarily good games, but just a consistent level you can tell people have tried to produce something to put in here, not simply to make a quick buck.
Yeah, and and it's successful too because Metro Exodus, for example, has sold 2.5 times on the Epic platform what it did on Steam.
Because not that one that's previous.
It's predecessors.
Predecessors, yeah.
So that's a pretty sizable piece of data.
I'll attribute that partially because the Epic Store is still as small as it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of content. Like in
There's
Steam,
a lot of attention.
in Steam, you can get really lost in everything that's there.
You're not wrong, but I think that leads more towards this argument of keeping the.
Right.
Now,
Exodus also had a name, and they advertised it a lot more this time. To be fair,
I think that's also a
Well,
factor.
I feel like Epic might have helped them with that.
100%, which
You
is
know,
why
we
they
want you
made
to
that
come
deal.
to our store. So, by the way, here's like this a bunch of money. That,
but they're also
you can-
killing it with all their. They're bringing Detroit over as an exclusive.
Yeah.
That's gonna. The 88% cut is gonna be huge for the developers. So everybody's gonna start probably end up moving that way, and we're gonna see a lot more of this in the future.
Here's an odd wrinkle. So I read an interesting article a couple months back about Vita developers, game developers, who are making these bloatware small games with easy platinums. And they were interviewed by my man, Jason Schreier. Shout out. Specifically talking about the reason why they make these games is because they're smaller studios that cannot gather the funding to make their next game. They have an idea specifically they want to make, and they pitch, nobody will give them the funding. They're too risky, so they make these bloatware games to make cash to help development of a real game. And so I do find that there's an interesting crossroads here of like, kudos
You're
to
doing
you.
bad things for good reasons.
Yeah.
Robin Hood here.
Correct. The
Robin Hood of game industry.
So interesting little wrinkle just to think about as we move on to our next
Man,
topic.
That's rough.
Yeah.
That's a hard moral dilemma to sit in the middle of. Like,
Yeah.
It's real rough, but it's not nearly as rough as being griefed by your friends while you're playing the same game together. People.
Are we talking about Division?
We're talking about Rainbow Six Siege. So Ubisoft and it's not massive. Who makes Rainbow Six Siege? I cannot remember. I know, but they have another developer that's in their fold. Because Massive makes division, but they're under Ubisoft.
No, I know.
Thank you. You work on that. They have put in a new anti-griefing system in place, which I think is freaking beautiful, in which it is called the boomerang bullet. So if you grief your teammates too much, it ends up shooting. You end up shooting yourself. So when you fire, the bullet comes back to you. I was like, that is incredible.
That's hilarious.
Okay, I mean they've really done a good job of like trying to moderate the community and say we have a hard stop here. You cannot cross this line, and once you do, ban.
Good.
Hard ban. You know, and we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
You know, like a long time ago on the show now. But honestly, that's probably one of the best.
So
That's
good.
one of the best troll ways I've ever heard of. Just saying, no, we're just gonna screw with you now because you're messing with everybody else.
It stays for the entirety of the match. So if you end up griefing someone, you will shoot yourself for the rest of the match. However, at the very end of the match, there is a system in place in which the person who was shot, like that you were griefing, can basically vote like, no, this was an accident, or no, this was a legitimate grief.
That's cool.
So you can turn it on and off, which is kind of cool.
So your friends can't get kicked even though you're being a D-bag.
So
It's straight up Ubisoft.
it's straight up Ubisoft.
Ubisoft Montreal is the developer.
Oh,
There we go.
Ubisoft
There
is
we
the
go.
publisher. Yeah,
There we go.
Thank you.
Ubisoft Montreal. That's what
Yeah.
we're
Brain. There.
proud of you.
Not
But-
liquid.
But I thought that was a really interesting thing, I guess. Just going to move on to the next one. That was weird. Sony has decided that they're going to copy Nintendo's Direct style into their own thing called the State of Play. As a matter of
I
fact,
heard it was amazing.
it happened at 5 o'clock today. Arguably lackluster at best.
Really?
So it is an interesting thing where it was a 20-minute video in which they discussed some of the games they've already announced and release dates for them, a lot of VR games, as well as discussed 3 new properties, one of which being Iron Man VR, which is kind of cool.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, the opening for it was actually really cool because it had a plane and then the plane explodes, and it's someone who's very much not Robert Downey Jr. going, Friday, suit me up, and a suitcase opens up, and all of a sudden, boom, suit on. I was like, that's a really dope trailer.
So you said it's a VR game though.
Correct. So you are
So you actually like
in the
flying
helmet
around
and you're
and-
flying around and shooting. It could just be a light rail shooter. It could be a little boring.
Well, so
I'm
if
okay
it's,
with that, though.
But if it's not, okay, so an open world concept for this. I mean, aside from like the
Yeah.
straight up like, I'm flying. This
Yeah.
feels weird because like we were playing VR yesterday, and even just doing the basic thing of like Steam Home and I'm skiing down the side of
Yeah.
a mountain was like,
This is cool.
feels weird. You know, this is really cool looking kind of thing. But I think that would be really neat.
I agree. So it was a great opener, and then it led into a bunch of games with release dates that we hadn't known yet, which was great, and ended on Days Gone. And I was like, Days Gone's a month away.
Yeah.
Why would you waste the potential on this? It was 20 minutes. There was no actual person that we know from Sony. It was a voiceless woman who, proper voice, did a great job, but
A
like
voiceless woman.
a
She
voiceless
said
woman.
nothing the entire time. It was nothing but subtitles.
a
faceless.
Thank you, voice. You understood what I was talking about, sir.
You know, it's funny. I didn't even recognize
That's how in sync you and I are. Just like, well, whatever.
Well, we have
We were just
conversations
going
like
on, and
this.
I'm sitting here like,
It's like my brain
What
being
did he
liquid.
just say?
Normally he would be like, "Oh, that just means he's fried."
Yep.
Oh no, he didn't get that one. Okay, well that's cool. But this time I got his man.
What I find interesting about this is that arguably
that's what I'm here for.
they did lack the content. Like there wasn't anything new. They announced that there's
Disappointing.
new Five Nights at Freddy VR, which was announced at GDC. There was information about No Man's Sky getting a VR mode, which is really cool. Falcon Age got a release date, which I'm very excited about. And then there was more information on Concrete Genie, which they're giving a fall release date. Why Sony? Why would you kill that game? That game looks incredible. It looks like a great AA game. Don't fucking put it out in the fall unless it's September.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
God.
It's gonna get ate up like a mad.
Like the monsters in the trailer. But overall, it was like, why did you beef this up? They announced it on Friday in the middle of the afternoon. Everyone had all weekend. Nobody from Sony said anything like, hey, maybe you should lower your expectations a little bit. And instead, everyone's like, what if they talk about, Last of Us 2? What if they talk about Death Stranding? What if they talk PS5?
Yeah, that's what everybody was truly expecting.
Uh-huh.
And though, I mean, it's not even like people were quiet about these expectations.
No.
They were pretty vocal. They should have quelled that
Yes. Now,
immediately.
as a first step, it's a little bit of a stumble, but I do think this is definitely something that they can recover from.
Yeah. Right.
The concept's great. Nintendo thrives off of this. They do a great job of interspersing characters that we know, like Reggie Fils-Aimé or even Miyamoto, other major players, and then some of their smaller people in between different trailers. So it feels a little bit more personal. It feels nice. It's not too much personality, which is what the problem with Xbox is. They have their own monthly show in which it's literally people sitting on a couch instead of actually showing games.
If it's too much of a show, then it's not really like an announcement.
Correct. So Sony needs to find the closer to the Nintendo Direct to make it successful. But overall, there's still a couple things I am excited about.
I always felt like Sony had a problem talking to its consumers in all forms. Granted, they have their moments where they do great, especially when they mess up.
Well, so
here's how you share games.
So-
Best YouTube video ever.
But
So, part of being a good company means that you're in tune with what's happening and with your customers and within your own organization. But you don't pay attention to what your competitors are doing. And I think they've done a good job of that.
I think they're
up
paying
to this point.
attention now.
But no. But the problem is that they've stopped paying attention to everyone.
Yeah.
Internally, I think they've done okay. Like I don't hear any complaints coming from Sony's like employees or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But you just don't pay attention to what your consumers are saying, even though we've been screaming it for months. And you don't pay attention to what your competitors are doing, which is arguably okay. You're just focused on what you're doing, kind of thing. But I think they finally got their ears open now.
I definitely think it's going to be really interesting to see what the next one's like. And how they actually announce PS5, how they actually come through with talking about Last of Us 2, because so far they've been successful with something like PlayStation Experience or other live conferences. Hopefully we can get that energy back, because this definitely felt like you're sleeping a little bit. So we'll see. We shall see. The final bit of news is probably the biggest when it comes to ramifications for the entertainment industry. I don't know why this stayed to the end, but maybe you saved the biggest for last. Disney has officially finished its acquisition of Fox
And Hulu.
and Hulu.
Yeah.
So
The end has come.
they are taking over quite a bit. There's some interesting tidbits that aren't quite solidified yet. As of right now of our recording, which is Monday the 25th, there appears to be imagery of The Simpsons on the Disney Corporation website. Apparently The Simpsons were not supposed to be part of that purchase.
Oh.
Really?
They were not supposed to be part of that purchase.
So what's supposed to happen with the series?
Yeah, that's a great question.
So
That's in limbo
Fox
state,
News is spinning off into its own Fox broadcast network, which is the assumption is some of their other properties were supposed to go with that, because Fox News was also not part of the purchase explicitly.
It's like a majority purchase, but you're
They're buying more IP than anything else.
So they bought 90% of what Fox is, but they're missing.
Interesting.
It's probably even more than that, probably closer to 95%. But Fox Corporation explicitly asked for specific things. One being the Fox News Broadcast Network, which is now spinning off to its own thing, Simpsons, and a couple of other
You
properties.
can't get rid of your propaganda wheel.
Of course not. Why would you do that? Heaven forbid.
Because I thought it was funny when I was actually seeing some of the information of this coming out, because Ryan Reynolds, of course.
Yes, of course.
Had to put out a tweet.
Great tweet.
I'm gonna throw it up on screen here because
Does anybody else read his tweets in his voice?
Yes, 100%.
the image is amazing. You guys have to look it up on his Twitter. It's like a picture of him in a Deadpool suit or whatever, like at the back of a school bus
With the
like
Mickey
with
Mouse
the little Mickey Mouse hat on or whatever, like he's showing up, like to Disneyland.
It's like my first day at the pool. It's so good.
They messed up giving him that,
Oh,
letting him keep
man.
that suit.
It's gonna be so good. We also
I don't think he asked. I'm pretty sure he just did.
Yeah,
We
I
also-
think that was actually in one of our stories. He literally just walked out and no one
Yep.
said a word to him.
Yeah.
we also know that Ripley from Aliens is now a Disney princess, along with the Alien Queen. I'm kidding, but they're
Oh
all
my
purchased
God.
by Fox, so yes, they're officially Disney princesses.
I hope that's so. Oh, man.
Along with
I know
Predator.
they're already out there.
So
and just,
That's what they were saying about Leia, whatever,
Yeah.
the Star Wars
Yeah.
purchase happened.
So it's going to be super fascinating to see what Disney does. You can tell by how they've changed the formatting of some of their more proper business brochures and stuff that it's definitely less childlike. They're going more for the full spectrum of what they can be. They've argued over and over again that a lot of these properties that they now own will continue to be rated R if they're rated R, made for adults if they're made for adults. They just want to make sure that they have them under the same umbrella. So it's scary.
It's interesting for me to see that them lightening up on their own restrictions.
Yeah.
Their own core beliefs here of, like, okay, we're very much a family-oriented thing, so all of our stuff's got to be PG-13 or below. Like, we do a few rated R things, but nothing too terrible.
Well, you better
But
get
now
ready for
we're
Deadpool.
a major production company, so that's okay. We're raking in all the dollar bills. So,
I'm
money over everything.
I'm curious to see if the Walt Disney Productions, which is what we see that whole Cinderella's Castle and all that, I wonder if that will stay under its own singular umbrella, because up until this point, everything's been with the exception of Marvel Studios. Everything's been Walt Disney Productions. So I'm wondering if we're going to see the splinter off of, obviously, the Marvel properties that Fox owned will go under the Marvel umbrella, but will they generate something else? Because we also have Lucasfilm, which is its own production studio. So I imagine Alien and all those Fox properties that are rated R are going to be their own thing.
I think you're going to start seeing that conglomerate, so that way they can keep the names they don't want associated with rated R stuff.
Correct. So,
I'm interested to see what Walt says whenever they decide to unfreeze him.
I know, I can't wait.
Disney is on point with branding, much like Nintendo is. So I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll sully it in any way.
It is terrifying and interesting at the same time. I, as a fan, am excited to see the X-Men come back into the fold when it comes to the Marvel Universe. I am excited to see some of these characters interact with each other. Like Deadpool has to be in a movie at some point in time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't necessarily want him for a full cast because he needs to be outrageous in himself.
I mean, the cast was technically in a Deadpool movie.
You're not wrong. It's so good. I love it so much. God, Deadpool 2 with the first class cast. It's so good.
He opens the door. Oh, sorry.
But I
It would
also...
have been funny if during that time they would actually had that same scene play in the X-Men movie. That would have been awesome.
I'm also a little afraid. I mean, this is taking away and becoming closer and closer to a monopoly. And now we have Google and we have other corporations that are definitely there as well. But that doesn't make this any less scary. As a matter of fact, it makes all of it more scary.
Yeah.
So we shall see. Please let us know what you think about Disney acquiring Fox, as well as all the other interesting topics we talked about in
the description below.
The description above, but I was actually going for the
important shit.
Thank you so much. I love cutting you off. Moving on to...
I cut you off.
Tots. GDC, baby. There was a lot of news. As you know, we're at the 45-minute mark, and there's still stuff to talk about. So I'm going to pull up my little handy-dandy cheat sheet here to go over GDC in its entirety. This will be high cliff notes because if we went over everything, we'd be here for 4.5 hours.
And you don't want to do that.
No, you don't. Not with all the sake you would consume.
But we can't.
That being said, I think we're going to start with the actual topic of GDC, the big one from the show,
The Kahuna.
Google Stadia.
Booyah.
I was going to say Nintendo.
That would have been
I
great. That would
could
have been so good.
ever think of.
So as a quick overview before we dive into it, Google Stadia is Google's new gaming streaming platform. The whole purpose of it.
And because we were talking about this at the beginning, for those of you who don't know, because the rest of us didn't, it seemed like, aside from maybe Brent.
Correct.
Stadia is the plural for stadium.
The more you know. Zing. That's a rainbow.
I would have
button.
always just said stadiums, but I've never had a reason to say stadium in a plural form.
That's because
I would have thought it
know,
would have been Stadia.
you don't know proper English, you swine.
That's fine.
Fine. It is a streaming platform which will allow you to play games, and we're talking not what Apple has released with Arcade, but games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Metro Last Light. I mean, they have
Like triple A titles.
AAA titles that are typically requiring a current gen console or a gaming PC on your phone, on your tablet, on your smart TV through the Chromecast. Like, basically giving you access as long as you have the internet capacity, which we'll dive into, to play. It is entirely done on their own servers in their data centers. You will have a controller that connects to Wi-Fi, or you can utilize controllers that are already there to play said games, and it will maintain your state next to your profile. So
Like
if you
full state too, not just
correct,
not just like, oh, I have to get to a save point. No.
yeah,
I'm gonna shut it down here and pause it, and then I'm gonna go to my phone and I'm gonna load it up exactly where I want.
exactly where it's at.
That is hot.
Amazing.
Coming out this fall in the U.S. and Europe, I think is what they
Honestly,
announced.
so that was the biggest uproar I
Yeah.
heard in the entire stadium whenever they were talking about it was whenever they said this is coming in the fall 2019, and everybody just sort of lost like, what do you mean you've been working on this for so long that it's able to come out this year kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, breaking it down further, we can get into some real nitty gritty
And the
here.
fact that it didn't leak at all.
It didn't
Seriously.
This is another scenario where people were saying, "Oh, Google's working on a next gen console. It's going to be heavy duty." And there's like, wait.
Like what? No, the rest
Just
of
like
us,
a
yeah, well,
just
first,
like a
we saw what was it, Project
Stream.
Stream.
Yeah.
Project Stream, was sort of the intro to this of like, okay, they're doing a streaming service. We know this, this is the big debut for, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and they're doing this for free for people who sign up for it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, they've got their hand in something big here,
Correct.
something revolutionary new. And, of course, it's Google fashion. It's got to be online. It's got to be in data centers. It's got to be a streaming service where they render everything and send it to you for the masses to be able to consume in any way that they can, regardless of what kind of hardware you have, regardless of what you can or can't afford.
Yeah.
Everyone has, well, I say everyone, the majority of people in the U.S. own a smartphone now. If I can play anything on this now.
The minimum requirement is a
Or
25 megabit internet speed
Yep.
and a device that can run Chrome.
Which is lower than I thought it was going to be.
So according to Phil Harrison, who is the head of the Google Gaming Division, the reason why they picked 25 megabits is because the FCC recently, as of this year, put out regulations that require every state to have a minimum of 25 megabits per second provided to them by the ISP
Really?
holders. Correct. So that means that
meaning their highest tier service has to
no minimum.
Oh.
So
They,
Spectrum,
what I'm saying is they have
AT&T.
to offer a minimum of, but I guess that is their minimum offering is
correct.
25.
The
Wow,
lowest they're allowed to offer now is 25
Is
megabits
that
per
even
second.
A G Pi, I guess I'll give-
dial-up is incapable, and so is DSL.
Correct, which is what we're talking about, broadband internet.
All right, only. Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. I
Yeah.
was like, man,
a Jeep Pi. This is
gonna
the
be
only
a
time I'll
tall
ever say
order.
this. Thank you.
Yeah. One good thing out of that shit sandwich. Thanks a lot.
I'm okay with that one. You know what? Like that one's worth it.
So that was the major hurdle there. I do find it very interesting. Phil Spencer himself, who is the head of Xbox's gaming division, said he was not only not surprised about this announcement, he very much expected it, but also stated that he is very, very skeptical because despite the fact that that is an FCC regulation, does not mean these corporations are actually keeping up to it.
Well,
Yep.
But by the same token, you can play on less than that. Like,
Correct.
You could still stream a 1080p 60 frames per second game at 480 in 30. It just downsamples whenever it streams it to you.
Yeah.
The idea is, regardless, your streaming experience stays the same, or your gaming experience stays the same.
Correct.
Maybe 30 to 60 frames, that kind of thing. That's the only thing that really changes. But yeah, your graphic fidelity will go down temporarily and come back up as soon as your internet comes back. That kind of thing. But if you have lower speed, I can't imagine they're just going to straight up block you and say no, you can't.
Yeah,
do this.
Yeah, no.
it's hard to say at this point because this is all very much high level. That's all they announced. They did show off a controller, which looks like the combination of the Xbox One and PlayStation because it's got the
It's got the comfort of the Xbox,
but the same dual
but
joysticks.
the dual joysticks down low like the PlayStation,
excited about that.
which I'm okay with.
I'm okay with it too.
Yeah.
I like joystick placement to me has never been a big deal, but
I wonder if they
I
put
like
rumbles in the
comfort of an
triggers.
Xbox controller. PlayStation
Yeah.
controllers are too much like this is a neat little art piece because it's symmetrical and looks good and stuff. Like that.
Do you think they spent millions of dollars on rumbles in the triggers?
No, I don't think they spent millions of dollars on like Xbox.
No, they probably said, "Hey, here's an existing tech we can modify." This
Correct,
a little bit."
100%.
Or here's two pieces of tech. Let's merge them.
It's very cute. It has the Konami code on the back of it, which I thought was kind of nice. It also comes in 4 colors right away, which is also incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why no other company Nintendo even was like, here's a Switch. We've got the gray controllers and then blue and red. You're like, wait, you're a children's company. Make all of them.
To be fair, now they offer like neon.
I
and
know,
a bunch
but
of
so
stuff.
does everybody else. Like, PlayStation has 15 colors at this point.
I mean, they've got some really cool stuff,
I
too.
mean, if you think about Xbox 360, Xbox 360 technically had black and white. You just had to buy 2 different consoles.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is not helping the point.
Same with PlayStation, actually.
They are also opening up their own studio. So it'll be Google Games. It is going to be head by Jay Raymond, who was in charge of Massive?
Massive.
Is it Massive? I don't know. What EA Motive. That's what it
Motive,
is.
yep.
Motive Studios, who worked on the Battlefield games. She has moved over. She's taking over for them. She has an actually fairly impressive resume. I can't remember off the top of my head. I know Battlefield has a weird
It definitely was her first time on stage like that.
Yeah.
She definitely didn't fit in with the rest of the Google
No.
people who are like straight-faced, monotone, like I'm going to talk about this because we need to be, to the point kind of
Yeah.
thing. And she had a lot of emotions coming out on stage. I was like, you really don't fit here, do you?
I think that's just video game people. Like a majority of them when they get on stage,
Yeah.
they are just excited to talk about their stuff.
Yeah.
So they're going to have their own first-party offerings that will only be offered on Stadia. There is no other option to get those games, as well as a large party, a third-party library. So they're partnering with id because Doom Reborn, the new game will be coming out.
Infinite.
Is it Infinite? I thought it was Reborn. It might be
What?
Doom
Eternal.
There we
Eternal,
go.
Yeah.
I was like,
Combine
it's
the
not reborn.
two.
It is not reborn. I know that.
Doom Eternal was coming there. They had, of course, Ubisoft, who is every game
Sure.
we have, throw
Not
it
a
on
problem.
Stadia.
No. After Odyssey came out, they were like, yes, please,
Yeah,
please,
everything.
just take it. Just take it.
Which I'm wondering if it would actually work better in that way than an actual console, just due to the processing power.
I'm sure it will.
100%.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
you're talking about,
The combined teraflops of the computing power is supposed to
10.7 over the 5.4 that Xbox One X offers, and 4.6, which 4.7, which the PS4 Pro.
Right. To be fair,
Teraflops don't matter.
I'll come back.
Teraflops
Actually,
don't
I want
matter.
to see so I've got a 1080 Ti downstairs. I'm actually
Look at me.
He's so cool. He's like, oh my god, do you use your Excel spreadsheets on that?
No, I render this podcast on it.
Motherfucker. PC nerds. Just kidding.
Collinsworth don't care.
Yeah, Collinsworth don't care. Look, he's got a spider on his head. They have an impressive library. I mean, there's stuff coming here. So regardless of the skepticism, which I think is well warranted.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, having to have that kind of connectivity to an internet provider and making sure that they don't flip the switch on you. That's the big thing. It's not that they don't have the capability of providing that to you, but we already know the West Coast and other parts of the U.S. deal with data caps along with other countries.
Which is insane to me to begin with.
We here on the East Coast are very fortunate that we don't have to worry about that at the moment.
Nope.
But the second this becomes a thing, I guarantee you it's going to start coming to us as well. And that is a huge concern when you're talking about being able to play this.
Well, hey, Google, I guess it's time for you to back us up then.
And that's the other thing that we haven't talked about yet, which is Google tends to create these projects and then back away from them. Jason Schreier recently was on multiple podcasts, but I happened to listen to him on the Kind of Funny Games cast, and he was pointing out like his major skepticism has nothing with the actual physical limitations. It has everything to do with Google as a company.
Yep.
And the fact that literally a week before this announcement was made, they announced that Google Plus was going away and they have to back up all your data on it. And that was a platform that they announced and said that was supposed to be a competitor to Facebook. Never really revealed until later on when it failed that it was actually made to help their photo analysis algorithm. They had no actual indication or desire to make a social platform. They just needed a reason for people to put photos in there. And that's
creepy.
And after it finished doing its job, they're like, well, we're done with it now. So that is the major concern.
Sorry. So I finally brought it up. 10.7 teraflops is what you said?
Correct.
I'll put it this way. My GTX 1080 Ti downstairs puts at 10.6.
Ho. So close.
And whenever that
so
that
far.
1080 Ti came out, whenever it was brand new,
Yeah.
that was an $1,100 graphics card.
Wow.
Like,
And
that's
you also have
impressive.
to-
That
No,
they're,
yeah.
that they're throwing this much horsepower into a data center. Like, so if I remember right, they're using AMD for the graphics chips and Intel for the processing chips.
Correct.
But it goes so much farther than that too, because they're talking about like the multiplayer modes, the online multiplayer, like BR modes, that kind of thing. Because you're talking about the ability to, first off, thinking about it from a technical standpoint, they're talking about thousands of people or 1,000 people,
Oh, yeah.
in a BR. Very doable.
Extrapolating with that technology, any type of game world. Like,
Right.
we're talking about taking Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is a massive game, multiply by 10, that's not a problem.
Man.
Yeah, and the idea is, like,
That's a
okay, so
lot.
you've got dedicated nodes that are just responsible for your servers. You get your CPU nodes and that are just responsible for your servers and communicating with the individual, like, render nodes. The render nodes are what you actually connect to be able to see whatever you're streaming against.
Mhm.
So you want to play online with your friends? Technically, all of you are just running off of a private server, basically, to do this if you're doing split screen or multiplayer. I hate the fact that they called it split screen because it's really not. I mean, they can do split screen, I guess,
Yeah.
where it's just two
Yeah.
render nodes rendering at the same time, but you still have some
For you kids at home, this is actually my class too.
I'm very excited about the fact that they're actually noticing that split screen's a desire and then saying, yeah, you can totally do it on your TV. Like,
Right.
if you literally want to split screen.
Not even like you have to have a PC hooked
Yep.
up. No. You can do it to a Chromecast.
Yep, and you can split screen, because the number one complaint from developers when it comes to console gaming and even PC gaming has been, if we split screen it, we have to drop the fidelity because the rate at which we're rendering has to be doubled, which means we're already going to the max capacity that we're capable of in the
Yeah.
console, so we have to cut it in half in order to make it run twice.
Well, so that's
Man.
what always impressed the crap out of me about Halo.
Yeah. Oh, Halo looks
You could
beautiful
do
even with split
like
screen.
so Halo 3 specifically. I mean, Halo 4
Even
and Halo 5 has it. Yeah,
Halo
yeah.
5 looks incredible in
Like,
split screen.
it looks amazing, but you can do 4-player split screen and then online.
Yeah.
But why not? Like, what's the downside there? I don't see one. Like,
Absolutely.
but the issue you run into is you run into Call of Duty's modern graphics that you see anyway, because Halo's even got some like scaled down stuff, that kind of thing, to I guess be able to handle that. But by the same token, Halo doesn't really have really fine, like ultra realistic graphical fidelity until you get really close up on armor or something like that. But they can get away with that kind of stuff.
I think we're also forgetting one important feature. It's actually a group of features, but it's basically lumped under the one thing, which is the whole point is this will be integrated into YouTube. So when you are watching a stream of Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, all you have to do is go, I want to play that. And there will now be a button that you can click on, and boom, you're in Stadia right there.
Yeah, but it'll copy his state too.
Like if you're a streamer and you're like in the middle of a game, you're like, oh, well, I had a little tough trouble. I'd be curious as to what you guys think about this. Boom, you're now playing exactly in the same save state as they were. Or you're Ninja and you're streaming on YouTube Gaming. You want to join Ninja. If he has the feature toggled on, you can join his match.
Yep, queue up. So the example they used was NBA 2K19, I think. Where it shows that you can actually build up a queue of your streamers or your viewers who want to join and play against you, for example, and they can join the queue.
And that, to me, is probably the most incredible part about it.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to play the other side here. I think that has very limited use.
Oh, 100%.
Because it's very specific use cases. It's not like, here's a general tool you can use that's very broad.
So here's my thought. The reason why I think it's very interesting is because, one, as someone who hunts down trophies, collectibles a lot in games, I tend to use guides. You've used guides. That's something.
I've never used a guide.
You're such full of It's something we dive into a lot. So even YouTube videos can sometimes be cumbersome when they jump or cut to a point in which you're confused, not quite sure where they are, especially if the game has poor level design.
Right.
So having the capability to go, boom, okay, they're right here, back out a little bit. I now understand where they are. Jump back to my save. Incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
I think it's almost going to create its own wiki, essentially, for game guides.
Two, there are plenty of instances, and I'm a very specific type of user, so I am probably limiting this, but there are definitely times where I watch top 10 clips of, like, here's a crazy boss fight, or here's a hidden secret boss fight on a game that I will never play, but I'm fascinated with. Yeah. So being able to go, you know what, I played Nier Automata, I got the first ending, that was enough for me. Holy crap, at ending 7, there's this boss, boom, I'm in it. Like, having that kind of ability, I think, is going to open up a lot more. On paper right now...
like that's kind of cheating out the developers, though.
So,
well, go ahead.
It depends on how you get... it all depends on the pricing, which is the big thing we haven't talked about yet. It depends on how you pay for it.
Well, and they didn't talk about it either. So.
Exactly.
And
that's going to be the hard part. So, I mean, the biggest...
We don't know what we're paying. We don't know what they're getting.
The speculation right now is that it's probably going to be a baseline subscription service, and then you pay for your games. Mm-hmm. I mean, a baseline subscription service is going to pay for the hardware every year. It's going to pay for, like your ability to connect to it, that kind of thing. It's going to basically maintain their server costs because they're going to have to upgrade hardware on a regular basis probably every year or two. They're going to have to, make sure that everything in their data center's up to par, especially if you have new games that are coming in that you want to be able to play. Because the other thing that they're looking at, too, from my understanding, is that you can actually play PS4 exclusive titles and Xbox titles on here, too.
So that's something they're pursuing.
They're going to have to work on it.
Yeah.
I don't see PlayStation playing ball.
I don't think Nintendo will. I think actually Nintendo is going to be the last one to go.
I agree
think
with that 100%.
Sony will go before Nintendo.
100%.
Yeah, based on Sean Layden's last remarks,
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft will probably be the first, like, yep, take us, please, we want to be absorbed, let us go, kind of thing. But
which totally kills the desire to buy any sort of Xbox device.
Yeah.
Why would you if you could just play it wherever you want?
To be fair, there was no desire to purchase an Xbox device before it.
Fired!
This is also why I don't believe Phil Spencer. Oh, I wasn't surprised at all. Then why did you make the box?
You heard it here from the Dick Master himself.
The Dick Master. Master.
I think the most underplayed part of this, though, because this is the biggest thing that they talked about the entire time was developer features.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So first off, like even like the YouTube streaming piece, that's a developer feature that they've got to throw in. Well, that's a tool they can use. But honestly, the biggest one for me was the machine learning texture rendering.
Oh yeah, that's really cool.
They can take some piece of art, like upload it into their machine learning system, and then throw it into a gray box system, and it will texture the entire system into this art style. You want to do concept art? Easy. Throw it in there. Machine learning figures out, oh, yeah, this is concept art. Outlines are like this. Okay, well, I'm going to outline all the objects, and it's going to render in this way. But then it shows what they did was they did a 3D render, I guess, recording of like this robot running across like a gray box, like environment, that kind of thing, a village or something like that with a cobblestone road, and then throw different types of art at the machine learning system, and it would re-render it with new filters.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like the ability to style games on the fly, basically, or re-render them anyway in different fashions with your own art style based on something that an artist literally draws into a system.
Well, and to dial this back real quick, in the same vein that of like it's not easy to just export, copy, paste a game from a PS4 to an Xbox One. Like you have to have a tool set to be able to do that. Stadia will be similar. Like it's going to be its own type of file or whatever you want to call it in order to actually render and save it, which means that those tools are going to be accessible exclusively to Stadia developers.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, but it goes it went a little bit farther than that too. Actually, I wish I had the.
So are the people like say if PlayStation did come over, are they going to have to program their game to be able to handle what Stadia wants, or is Stadia
to be able
handle
to
what
operate
that's
on that operating system?
But it's from my understanding though, it's a basic PC like Unix based system though. It's their base. It's their OS
Linux
like
or
Unix.
Unix.
Yeah.
So Unix is the basis for Linux.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unix is what Linux is built on top of.
I knew what Linux was barely.
It definitely won't have issues in the sense that it's not going to take them long to do so. However, PlayStation has their own. The way the PS4 is set up is that it has its own file naming structure. Like all those things are going to have to be reformatted for.
100%.
For it. But again, it won't take long. It'll
No.
be
I mean,
pretty quick.
realistically, the game engines can be lifted and shifted. Your textures, your rendering, your 3D models can all be moved as they are. That's pretty straightforward. But the other thing too is you're putting this on a system that's built for this.
For the most part. I mean, I will say, having worked in multiple game engines at the same time, not everything moves as smoothly as you would hope it would.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the idea is that they can make the transition easier.
Correct.
And Google 100% can take the time and say, okay, so we have, so just reading off a list I've got in front of me here, Unreal, Unity, Havoc,
Yes,
High-Tech,
of course,
something
of course,
like
of
that. They
course.
can say, we're going to figure out how to build plugins to make this interface directly.
They're going to make a
with
pipeline
no,
for sure.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. They're going to make a pipeline to make it as easy as possible for every developer that says yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because why would you not?
I mean, the next step, is for them to go full Epic and just build their own.
Yeah.
And I could see it.
I could see it too. I mean, Amazon has their own.
Yeah.
They purchased one and renamed it Lumberyard, and it's free to. Actually, I might play around with that. I've actually been meaning to.
Lumberyard.
Yeah. I'm always interested in how a game engine handles itself.
I think we're gonna have a lot more issues with
Oh no! Finish off that little spike.
the internet
Round two.
of the ISPs handling the 25 megs a second. We've been in places recently which can't handle that. They were like, "You're gonna have 3 megs per second," and I'm like, "Take it with you."
Anybody who believes that this technology is going to be utilized for the entirety of the areas that they say it will be available in is definitely delusional.
Yeah.
That is not the case. This will be available in San Francisco, here in Charlotte,
East
because
Coast
we
and
have
West
infrastructure.
Coast.
Like, yes.
Maybe somewhere in the north that has, like the top end. But when you get into Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota,
Flyover states.
Yeah, you're not going to get it. I mean, West Virginia, not going to happen.
Country
and
roads,
only in
I
major
mean,
cities.
taking me home. Those kind of things that
To
are
be
just going to
clear,
not going to
this is not an insult to anybody. This is just
No,
pure
it is.
fact.
Get better
seriously,
internet.
This is the reality of unless you live in the urban areas, the very small urban areas of those,
Yeah.
you're not gonna have it.
Yeah.
They either don't want a
You know,
game
like-
or they don't know they want a game yet.
Like realistically, the majority of Colorado, I feel like yes, you might have internet in the hot spots that are like around Denver and even like up in the mountains, where like there are tourist locations. Once you step out into like the vast majority of the rest of the state,
The rural areas, yeah.
right, there's nothing left.
Well, and I think that this is partially another play for Google because, I mean, they all came out and said fiber was to prove a point, and they proved a point. I believe that this is the next step in that direction. And it's not the only reason for it, but it totally 100%
Well-
is like, hey, if we provide a service and it applies pressure to ISP holders, they're going to have to go out there because the customers are going to want it.
Well, not only that, but Google's proven saying, we will provide the internet if we have to.
Yeah.
Don't push me.
But they're not anymore.
Yeah, anymore.
Google's backed off of that.
Yeah.
They have
But-
backed
but-
up, but
but
they
I'm
haven't
not-
dropped it.
But actually, I will say that this is a different angle they can push. I didn't think about this before.
I think that's
actually a good
100%
point.
what it is.
Like they could say, 25 megabit a second, and those people who are still sitting at 10 because maybe the ISPs haven't updated to it yet because they're still getting grandfathered in under
Yep.
whatever time period they have to upgrade all their infrastructure. Google's going to be like, by the way, if you people want this, out in the Midwest, you can have this. You just got to push with your ISPs
Yep.
to make it happen. And then suddenly there's an uproar about it.
And I would like to be fair, we don't know the pricing of this, but I can pretty much guarantee this is not going to be a moneymaker in the sense that like Google's going to profit off this. They're just wanting to push the internet so people have Gmail accounts.
I have a hard time believing that Ubisoft
mean,
wants to
That's
help.
not a bet. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing that Ubisoft didn't get so hard behind this without knowing things.
No,
Okay, to
no.
be fair, Ubisoft was was having a hard time as it was, but
Who knows how long ago this deal was made is a very good point because they were having a hard time not too long ago. I'm not saying the publishers themselves won't get paid. I'm saying Google as a platform isn't making money off this. They're doing this to once again.
they'll probably break even.
Yeah,
at
they're
best,
going to
but-
push to this platform so that they can push their other services out there to make money.
right. And realistically, this also gives them a reason to
What
venture
other
into.
services is this going to branch off from?
Gmail, baby. If you have better internet
Oh,
out in rural
you
areas,
gotta have a
you'll
Google account.
You'll have your Google account. You have to have it subscribed there.
Which means you immediately get Gmail. You immediately get, well, actually, I would say Google Plus, but that doesn't exist anymore.
Oops.
um,
But I mean, access to YouTube, access to their
Private ad-
Allo or whatever.
your own personal, targeted advertising.
Yeah.
Like all kinds of stuff.
The-
Like,
It's probably to me. It seems like the insidious end goal of all of this, but it also feels like they're
well, no, but they're
dancing into other mediums they just haven't played with yet.
right. But by the same token, I think they're also doing it with the game developers and the customers in mind.
Correct.
We can give the tools to the game developers to make better products, which ultimately make your customers happy.
I feel like
I'm excited. I'm honestly really excited for this.
the downfall is going to be the ISP.
Right, but what I'm saying is like they're going to Google can force the hand of the consumer to go to the ISPs and complain about this nonstop.
I mean, the only
You'll
reason
get- you'll
our
get-
ISPs moved is because Google was coming into town, and then we started seeing the bumps.
Right.
But if they're not going into their towns, they're not going to worry about it.
But what I'm saying is this product will go into every town.
Yeah, I know. Anytime
Once
I have
Stadia
internet.
releases in every part of the country, like and even like in the Midwest states anyway, where like the data center might be a couple 100 miles away, that kind of thing. When you can get a decent connection to it, that kind of thing, you still have to have the throughput for it. You still have to have 25 megabits plus a second, but you're going to have your customer like AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, Spectrum. You're going to have your customers complaining to you nonstop until you give them or offer them internet fast enough to do this until you build the infrastructure for it.
In a lot of those states, I don't think there's enough people there for them to care.
I think they will if people decide, you know what, I'm just going to move to something else. Because
Correction. There's not enough educated people there to know, to complain, to care.
I think there's more people there than you expect, and I think that
What are you calling
it's,
them dumb? Come on.
it's
No.
it's
Like,
less.
literally knowing who to talk to and that they can do this. Because as we know, like we've seen where like
I wouldn't put it past Google to just put it on their FAQ site. Just talk with your ISP if you don't have speeds offered in your area currently fast enough to support this.
because I've seen a lot of people just totally okay with what they have because that's what they've
Yeah.
always had
Yeah.
and they don't know to look for more.
I'm thinking less upon the current generation, and once again, no insult to anybody else, but I'm thinking more along the lines of the younger children who are knowing that there is more out there. They
more,
are
more
have-
of the gaming
the
generation.
technology
too.
comes to them easier. They're seeing it more often than the older generation, and they're the ones who are going to want it. So when they start asking for it, and this older generation has no idea how to handle it, they're going to help guide them there. And it's less about
That's the hope, yeah.
it's less about pushing the ISPs directly. I think it's more about just getting it out there, because the second you start formulating news stories about Google, or Comcast cable doesn't care about spreading high-speed internet to Nebraska, and that becomes a hot topic in the news center, you better believe they're going to fix that real quick.
Oh yeah.
So it'll be
But
interesting to see.
by the same token,
regardless.
it's also how many people actually cared about Nebraska. But going back to Google's
Yeah.
news platform,
What are you saying,
how many people are
Nebraska's
actually
not
reading this?
There you go. Yeah, Google's got all the tools in their pocket now. It is really interesting to see. Pricing is the big one for me. I definitely am one who likes to adapt newer technology a little bit faster, but not right away.
Yeah.
I'm super curious.
Prediction.
Okay.
I see this along Xbox Live kind of pricing. $60 a year would probably get you access to the baseline service.
I agree, and I will add a caveat to what you described earlier, which is subscription plus purchase your own games.
Right.
I think much like Xbox Live Gold and PlayStation Plus, there will be a library of free games, maybe small,
100%.
but they'll give you a game or two a month, and that will bring you in, and then you can purchase the rest.
Yeah, that's kind
Okay,
of
all right, yeah, game like a part of the subscription is
Correct.
a few free games.
It's
that
a
they decided-
PlayStation Plus version.
Correct.
It's
Okay.
Stadia Plus.
Yep. And so that way they're able to actually lure you, because
Stadia Platinum. They got to go above,
because I
Stadia
think
Plus Plus.
I think it's a
Stevia.
harder sell to go in and be like, cool, you got to drop $120 right now to play a game, and that's just the first time purchase.
Right.
But I
Well,
think it's much. I know developers can save money because it's supposed to be cheaper. Not necessarily means they're going to charge less. We'll see.
Right.
But given that first price point, I think it's going to be a lot easier if they're like, hey, by the way, $60 you get 2 free games this month.
Well, 100%. That'll lessen the blow. Or even if they go the dual price option again.
Yeah.
Like Xbox did, $10 a month or $60 for the year, which to me is a giant ripoff. But regardless, it's like the difference now between because Origin's doing the same thing.
Yeah,
you can pay for a yearly subscription to their game service or the monthly. The monthly is literally double the cost of the yearly price if you pay up front.
They want that contract and they want it to renew, even accidentally if it has to. The
bastards.
The big part for me is if it's not pushed that way, to where they're actually buying the game individually from the developer. Which,
bastards
by the way,
is not a cuss word.
What?
It is.
No,
it is not. It's
a
in the
bastard
Bible.
is someone who is born out of wedlock.
Are you saying that I was born out of wedlock?
You better believe it. So is the entirety of Google.
I'm actually
Or
probably.
Origin EA. I don't know who we're talking
Man, I'm gonna look this up now.
Continue, please.
So if this price point doesn't work, whereas you're paying a service fee essentially to have access to the marketplace to be able to play these games, purchase these games to play them, I feel like and it turns out to be you're paying, only the introductory price, whatever that be, $10 a month, $20 a month, whatever, and you can have access to any game that is on that marketplace, and they get paid based on the time that you've allotted to that.
Yeah.
That could be a problem for the developer.
I agree.
Because, as we discussed earlier, that provides people who want to, play BRs get more money for what they really shouldn't be getting compared to other games. Like games like Florence, for example, will get shut out and not get paid a bunch of money because it's not a very long game. Not that it's not good enough game, that it's not worth a certain amount of money.
Well, I also think much like current publishers and major platforms, they tend to do contract on a case-by-case basis, so it may not necessarily hurt them as extensively as we are imagining here, but it really does depend upon the actual price.
For me to want to be a part of this, I would need more transparency.
I agree.
100%, and I hope we get it because we don't get it with PlayStation Plus. We don't get it with Game Pass.
So we won't get contract transparency. You're not going to know how much they're paying people.
We need to understand what we're getting into fully, I think, as a consumer, as a responsibility, because if not, we're going to be destroying our own industry that we love.
I think we need to know a certain amount of information. I think if they're paying them by
I don't want to know numbers. I want to know that they're okay with it.
Well, and that's my point. Is like if they're talking about game publishers will come out and say
please don't buy it on this console because we get screwed.
Not necessarily that, but they will say we have better deal. We make more money on this platform than any other. They have been known to say.
I have heard that before, but it is rare too. It is not exactly common.
I would like to know if they're doing it paid by hour, which seems kind of antithetical because there are plenty of wonderful games that have sold ridiculous amounts of money that are not long.
Well, I just hope that no one's stupid enough to sign that contract if they're doing an indie game like Florence or something like a boy that's looking for his sister or girlfriend.
Limbo,
thank you.
Journey as well. I think we're going to have to wait.
That game company, right?
God, I love that game company. We're going to have to wait for summer because they said they're going to have new details in the summer. So
we'll find out. And
at
to be
E3,
honest, it was super smart of them not to give away a price point
summer.
because Apple's arcade. Now, granted, it's nothing comparative at all to what's going on.
They're two unique
but it
services.
Definitely would have given perspective as to what to expect.
Yeah. I really so I'll have to share this with you because it came off of the Split Screen podcast, which is Kotaku's podcast, which primarily has Jason Schreier on there. As anyone who watches the show knows, I adore that man. And he interviewed Phil Harrison with a wonderful interview in which he continuously egged him on because Phil Harrison's like, we have more to talk about in the summer. He's like, at E3? In the summer. At E3? In the summer. Okay.
At E3.
So we'll be back in the summer. At E3? I was like, get him, Schreier. F up, Harrison. You're going to do it. That's a cuss word. So any last thoughts on Stadia before we move on? Because that was the big one. It took up quite a bit of time.
Only about 30 minutes.
Love it, can't wait.
I'm skeptical. We'll see what happens. Google's got a bad history.
Yeah.
Much like PlayStation did. PlayStation's got
Yeah.
a bad history with stuff too, but they obviously just doubled down again
Yeah.
on VR. So we'll see what happens.
I'm very curious to see it myself. I am awaiting more news.
If PlayStation can change even a little bit, I think Google can too.
I don't think Google is going to change, nor do I think PlayStation's in trouble. But let's move on
I didn't say they were in trouble.
to Epic.
You said they were in trouble. I didn't say they were in trouble.
Epic has brought quite a few bits of news, nothing too crazy. Obviously, we dropped the bombshell early, which is great. It looks like Epic is bringing their games to Humble Bundle. I thought this was actually kind of cool.
Yeah, I did too.
Once again, Humble Bundle is a great cause. If you do not contribute to their storefront, I highly recommend you do. There's actually quite a few new Humble Bundles out. Not all of them are game software. That's very important to point out. They sometimes do Photoshop software or books as well. Right now, they have a bundle for language software. So if you're trying to really dive into something, $25, you can get a huge plethora of tools for language software, including German, Japanese, French. It's really cool. So
Japanese
in
work out for
English,
you?
in English, I still do Duolingo.
Oh, you are still doing it?
Big fan, man. Big fan. But if you have more time and you're trying to devote yourself to something, it's a great way to do it. So bringing their games to Humble Bundle to sell. As you talked about earlier, Quantic Dream is partnering with them to bring Detroit, but also Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls.
Yep.
So those are coming to PCs the first time they've ever been on PC, exclusive to the Epic Store for 12 months, along with Control from Remedy, which was shown at last E3, is coming out in August. They have a 12-month contract with them as well.
I don't remember that one.
It's a woman who's like in the. I'll show you a trailer because it's really hard to describe. They did not show a whole.
I was gonna have to just remind me to look at it.
Only for 12 months though.
12-month exclusive contract, and then it's open up to other platforms, other PC platforms.
Okay.
That is the majority of these. So Metro Exodus was the same way, as well as the other Outer Worlds, which is that game from Obsidian that looks incredible.
That's an interesting play. They're requiring them, I guess, to go for exclusivity contracts if they're going to publish, I guess, initially.
Correct.
Well, I mean, they're getting the incentives they want from them.
Well, and it also,
I imagine.
it also appears that these developers are exclusively going after them because of the cut. I know Obsidian is a.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, first off, they take the lowest cut percentage of any other platform or sales
12%.
platform available now, right?
Yeah. Yes,
Compared to the 30.
Yep, 12 compared to 30. And Obsidian has some wonderful, wonderful stories about the turmoil they have been in. I don't mean wonderful to represent them because there was a lot of bad times.
Wonderful turmoil.
But interesting stories,
Beautiful
I should say,
chaos.
about their own development lifestyle. And so them taking a larger cut does not surprise me at all. But I thought that was really, really interesting. I think they're getting more and more of these large AAA and AA games that are being well-known from well-known publishers or developers, I should say. They're expanding their Dev Grants program with $100 million in Epic Mega Grants. So this means that they're going to have basically give developers more access to money to develop games that will come to the platform. They pick these and choose these very carefully. It started as $5 million as the Unreal Dev Grant, and they're bumping it up to $100 million. That's the successor to the $5 million Unreal Dev Grants. So I thought that was kind of interesting in and of itself.
Yeah.
In allotments of it's going live right as Epic finishes up paying the last of the initial $5 million in dev grants, and Epic says it will distribute the new $100 million fund in allotments of 5,000 to 500,000. Oh yeah, because it's $100 million to creators without any expectation of IP ownership or publishing rights.
Really?
Wow.
So they are.
I mean, that's why they're calling it grants.
Correct.
The idea is there is no expectation of payback. There's no expectation of ownership or any of that stuff. It's just
They're trying
free money.
Really hard to appear, even though they may not be the most consumer-friendly place, to be the developer-friendly place.
I will give them credit that they are really trying to push for this platform to become like. So they are really using. And I'll call it residual at this point because I feel like Fortnite's kind of flatlining or tailing off at this point, where like maybe people are migrating off the platform now, especially now that. Well, I mean, I want to have a quick quip on this anyway. Firestorm's just come out. Call of Duty's BR is out. Like a lot of other BRs have stepped onto the
battlefield.
Exactly. The battlegrounds.
Yes.
No, but because they've all stepped onto the field now, like the idea is they can all sort of compete against it, which means that sort of tailed off, or Fortnite has finally tailed off anyway, which means that they're still using the money that they've stockpiled at this point to go for the preservation idea here.
I agree 100%.
And they're doing it the right way, I think. I think they're definitely doing it not necessarily just surviving as a company, but they're definitely advancing, I guess, the space.
I think originally it was a play to try to keep their money, and which was a lot of money, by the way. Like, they didn't even have to try, but they're doing this as like, we can actually make a little bit more money and actually help other people out. So
I think what it comes down to is rather than tackling the consumer as the person to kind of cater to, they're tackling the people that curate their store. And I think that's a smart play because it's one that seemingly is not...
It's been neglected easily.
Yeah, it has not been done very well.
Yeah.
And they've been constantly complaining.
Hasn't been done in this way, I guess is a better way, because arguably mobile markets and Steam and now the consoles have opened themselves up to try and curate to the developer, to the creator, to try and allow anything in so that you have a chance. The problem with that, it's created a race to the bottom scenario in which most people don't succeed unless they're huge.
Yeah, you also lose out on a large percentage anyway of what you're making.
Correct.
If you're making anything like
Correct,
that,
which is why I think this is such an interesting play where they can go, hey, guess what? We care about you. You care about your players. You keep them happy. Like, we'll do what we can to make sure they have the features they need, but it's your job to bring them here.
Yep.
We'll take care of you.
Well, because actually that makes sense, because realistically the game store is not necessarily why you come to the game store.
Correct.
The games are why you come to the game store. So actually, Epic, good on you.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting
Sounds like
play.
trickle-down
Good on
theory
you.
to me.
The last bit of Epic news is Epic will continue to utilize real teams of people for curation, which we've already talked about. So I just wanted to highlight that once more. Moving on to their rival, an arch nemesis, Unity. That is a joke because Unity is still very small comparatively. Unity is partnering with the Havoc physics engine to update its own physics engine, which is very exciting. We've talked about that as well. They're partnering with NVIDIA to utilize that new real-time ray tracing we talked about last week, which is wonderful. And they're also partnering with Tencent for game releases in China, including Call of Duty Mobile.
Lots of monies.
So this is
mobile.
This could be rough.
It's actually coming out here in the U.S. as well.
Interesting.
Come on, COD buddy. You're my COD bro. You're my COD boy. You're my COD piece. I do find this interesting because Tencent owns partnership or part of
He's the biggest.
Epic, so we've already
He's a partial
discussed
owner
that.
of Epic.
Yeah, thank you. There we go. That's the way to put it. So they're partnering with another software, like a engine company. I don't know. It's very odd. Tencent seems to have all their fingers in all the pies, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, they do weird things, and they do things that scare me.
They're germs.
But Unity is definitely making a play to make itself better, which I enjoy. I have a
They're
special
a
place in
virus.
my heart for Unity.
Personally.
Any game I see with the Unity engine logo on it makes me happy. So,
Yep.
moving
He
on.
wasn't happy when he was using it.
It was very frustrating at times. Let me tell you about slurping later. Speaking of which, Nintendo's Nindy Conference. I know it sounds like a joke. What's great is that John has no idea what I'm talking about, and Mark knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I probably do.
Yeah,
Slurping?
it's mathematical stuff.
Yeah, I'm not. What are you talking about?
Don't worry about it.
I understand that. It's a joke.
Nintendo's Nindy Conference. They went ahead and dropped a bombshell on us. They started with the announcement that Cuphead is coming to Switch. Cuphead, the Xbox Live exclusive game, is coming to Switch. MDNR, I believe, is the developer.
Which is another reason why I don't know why they bothered with the box. You literally took one of the best games that you had that is exclusive, and then you're just like, here. I'm like, thank you.
To be fair, I think it was a matter of time. The exclusivity contract was going to run up because how long has it been now?
It's been less than a year. However,
It's got to be at least a year.
no, it was August last year.
Was it really?
There had to have been an exclusivity contract somewhere in there.
Pretty sure Microsoft Studios published that game, which means there is no exclusivity rights. They own the IP.
Oh, I didn't realize they published it.
I believe that is the case. You have the Google box right here. You can help us out.
I'm about to Google box it.
That being said, what is more fascinating is that this game will be the test bed for Xbox Live functionality on Switch. So they're
interesting.
also bringing in the ability to talk with your friends and check your achievement score and all those features. Correct. That's exactly what it seems like.
But you've got to have. I'm assuming you're going to have an
Xbox Live Gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Indie video game published by Studio MDHR.
So it is only okay. So Microsoft did not publish it. I was incorrect.
The game was released for Microsoft Windows and Xbox One in September of 2017.
Okay, so it's been over a year.
Thank God my memory. I was like, I guess it has been.
You know what? I will bet that they probably had an exclusivity contract in there for 12 months.
No,
Yeah,
it was
That,
released on
that would sound appropriate.
That would absolutely sound appropriate.
and
It
then
is
they'll
usually
say,
the deal.
"Hey Nintendo, Hey.
No, this is April
but they've already got-
2019. It's coming out.
So I believe that this is more along the lines of not just that exclusivity right going up, that contract. I do believe that Microsoft is helping them make this happen.
Oh, especially if they're trying to make, especially if Microsoft on their own is making the push onto Nintendo, that would make sense
Yeah.
too. You know, I mean, well, actually, no. If they're building in with Xbox Live features, because this could go one of two ways. Either the developer and publisher are like, all right, well, we've already got such a big basis on Xbox for this. Let's continue our Xbox Live integration now that it's available on Switch or will be available on Switch, and just integrate it as the first game as part of that. Or Microsoft's backing them on it.
Yeah.
It would make more sense for Microsoft to back them on it, just because this could be their debut.
I think the big thing is definitely going to be what comes next, because there are rumors of both Ori games coming out, Ori and the Blind Forest, and then Ori and the Wisp of the Willows,
Yeah.
which is a game that has not released yet on Xbox One. So if it ends up releasing in a similar time frame as it does on Xbox One, this totally is Microsoft pushing the behind the scenes.
Gotcha.
So nonetheless, Cuphead on Switch is still a huge deal. Not only that, this is going to go in a far more chronological order than it happened in the actual Nindies event. But Blaster Master Zero's sequel came out literally that day, Blaster Master 2, as well as Vlambeer Studios released Nuclear Throne. There are also apparently, we had Cuphead Katana Zero, which is a really cool platformer in which you die in one shot, but you have time-windy abilities. You take drugs to slow down or rewind time. You are a samurai mercenary in the real world, and so you will spend stages similar to Hotline Miami where you're trying to kill everyone in one go, and at the very end, you have to go to therapy. And when you're in therapy sessions, you can choose to skip it. If you skip it, it has negative implications on your gameplay, or you can choose to sit there and listen. That was kind of cool.
That is awesome.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Vlambeer also said they're bringing Super Crate Box, which I believe you probably have played. I played it. It's on Vita and PS4.
Super Crate Box?
Yeah, it's coming to Switch.
I don't think so.
The ultimate in-app purchase game.
And then, of course, Vlambeer Games is bringing a collection of minigames called Vlambeer Arcade. It is starting with a game called Ultra Bugs, but the whole point is that you will purchase this arcade game, and then over time, they'll add more and more and more of these little minigames.
And you'll literally never be able to play with it because all it has is bugs.
Correct. Just a bunch of bugs. You'll never be able to figure it out. Acid Wizard Studios bringing survival horror Darkwood to Switch in May. In June, Crazy Games brings My Friend Pedro, which is about an assassin who has a talking banana that tells him what to do, and it looks insane.
We have 3 of them.
You have 3 assassins that talk to bananas?
They're all named Pedro.
Pedro's got it. There we go.
Actually, 4 if you count the Strange logo.
Cadence of Hyrule. The biggest bomb dropped in this
Yes.
was it. So, have you ever heard of Crypt of the Necrodancer?
No.
It is an indie game that is a roguelike in which you play to a rhythm game style. So, top-down Zelda-like structure in which you're moving through the dungeon, killing enemies, collecting treasure, except you have to do it to a beat of a song. So you have to press the button to the beat that's playing and move over and attack and dodge. It's incredible.
Interesting.
That studio is developing a Hyrule Zelda-themed game with the same combat system. And this is set in Hyrule. So this is like an actual legit Nintendo-published Zelda game from an indie studio.
I'm
I
intrigued.
can't believe they let someone to play with this. Like, that blows my mind.
Never happened before.
Like, I was excited to see something new coming out of Zelda, but this was something else.
They've
I
allowed,
thought it was a joke at first. Seriously, I was like, "Oh, check this out, Brent. This is funny." It's like, "Yeah, that was on the." And I was like,
Oh, it's real.
Yeah. So they've allowed large studios like Capcom to develop for them. We've got the Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, and the Minish Cap from that. However, this is the first time a small studio is able to actually play with a large IP, and I am super excited about it.
"Oh yeah, I hope they do well with it."
There's also the driving adventure NeoCab is coming to Switch this summer. Double Fine is bringing Rad, which is a 3D action game about mutating. So it's a little bit of a roguelike as well. I'm very excited about it. Do you have trouble pouring? Is that the problem?
No, I was gonna be excited. Nothing, just go on.
Okay, go ahead. You got the first fill. Decoy Games is bringing Swim Sanity, which is a 4-player action game. Side-scrolling, looks pretty cool. Bloodroots actually looks like a lot of fun. It is another style of like puzzle action game in which you die in one hit, but the goal is the top-down viewpoint, almost like Diablo, I guess, but you play as a guy who is in a berserker rage. So you have to run around and pick up objects to kill enemies. You can't kill them yourself, so if you don't have an object, you can't kill an enemy.
What?
And they will come after you in the level. And so your goal is to go and grab, like, if you jump on a barrel, you'll actually roll across the barrel, and you can run across enemies, but it only has 3 uses. Once you've done it 3 times, the barrel breaks. So you have to go find the next weapon. There's like a bear trap chain, so you can throw that, and it can launch you up to an enemy that's on a higher level.
It's kind of a resourcefulness kind of game. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun, actually.
It'll definitely be a brain bender because you're going to have to constantly think of, like, okay, what's the next? Because it's live action, I'm guessing. Yeah,
absolutely,
okay, so.
absolutely. There's also Creature in the Well, which was the other game that caught my attention. This is a game that I keep using Zelda-like, but it seems to be like a lot of these games are diving into that dungeon crawler-esque technique.
Yeah.
Except in this one, it's post-apocalyptic. You go into these dungeons, and your goal is that you're an electrician. You have to turn the power on. And so what happens is you walk into a room, and electricity starts flowing out onto a pinball stage. And it's not a pinball table. Like, each stage has bumpers and stuff in which these electricity balls go through, and you have to fire them back to turn on the electricity. And it's orchestrated in weird ways. Great level design. It looks funky. It looks super funky, and I'm very excited about it.
Funky's
He
an
likes
interesting
funky.
word to hear you use.
We're going to have a little jam session downstairs. It'll be a lot of fun
All right.
after this. Stranger Things is announcing a retro game, Stranger Things 3, apparently. That's going to be released July 4th along with the Netflix show. Pine is a third-person open-world action role-playing game that looks interesting to me. I think it's going to be actually fairly boring. Dylan will love it. Overland is a squad-based, turn-based strategy game, which looks very interesting. And then finally, The Red Lantern is a story-driven adventure game in which you play as a woman who is attempting the Iditarod, that Alaskan dog sled race.
Oh, okay.
And so you are going, it's a survival-based first-person game in which you have to gather resources, keep your dogs alive. You can get attacks. You have to defend yourself. It looks really cool.
You have to sleep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So overall, a wonderful direct. They had a lot of variety, as you could tell from our various reactions here. This was on the final day of GDC and technically not incorporated, but I felt like this is the best.
Wait, was it direct or Nindy?
It was a Nindy Direct.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, I know. Nintendo. They're great. They do large directs focus on specific games. They do large directs focused on their large titles, and then they do a Nindy focus on the smaller titles. So this is
But Nindy was part of GDC, though.
It was technically not part of GDC. It was released in the same window, so everyone is speculating that they were trying to do it to line up with it.
Gotcha.
A lot of people made announcements at GDC, so this seemingly coincides. Like, hey, we announced it, the Nindy thing dropped, all that. But overall, a jam-packed GDC. Like, we talked about it earlier, it seems like there was less content, but more to talk about because of the variety and the depth of the content. Was
very few
ridiculous.
things, but very few things, but very few big things.
Yeah.
Like massive things with so much depth to them that you just can't talk. You can't help but talk about them for literally an
hour and a half.
and we've consolidated.
Yeah, we went through
seriously.
that fairly quickly comparatively.
There's between Apple and Nintendo, then GDC happening.
Yeah.
Because you've got Google and Unity and Epic. There's so much happening in one time frame. Like I've had like we've all I'm sure had to bump stories because
100%.
we could not. There's no way we're going to be able to
100%.
talk to them,
So,
talk about them. So
we apologize, but also hope you enjoyed the longer video. We will probably do something very similar at E3. Guaranteed, there probably won't be an important because the important bit will be E3.
Yeah.
That being said, I think it's time to move on.
I don't know. It might not be with PlayStation on there.
We'll see. We'll see. But I do think it is time for last call.
last call.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here because we're leaving. It's late. It's time to get out of here. Before we go, I do want to put out another shout out because this weekend, that's right, I got it right this time. This weekend is PAX. We know our boy Xphobia is going. A friend of ours, Sean Collins, with his lovely girlfriend will be there. I believe Dylan and Queen Crystal.
I actually want to put more emphasis on this. If you find Sean, because we did mention this last
Yes.
time. If you find Sean, you can't miss him. He's like 6 foot.
We'll put a picture in the
6'7"
description down below.
Correct.
He's like 6'7", red hair, glasses. Just walk up to him and say, "Hey, Sean, I saw you from the podcast." You.
There you go. You're a piece of shit, is what you can say.
Yeah,
you just tell him straight up.
Just tell him.
You're a
you, straight up.
garbage
Like,
human being. We are surprised you existed this long. I think that's all fair.
Tell them specifically it's
I'm
from
so
the Happy
glad I'm
Hour
not
crew.
there to
Yeah,
have to,
you
like,
tell
hold
them
it
that.
back up.
All is fair in love and war, or just war, one of the two.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to point out, and this is a personal shout out that has nothing to do with his actual podcast or anything else. Square Enix has announced a brand new video format going over the creation of Final Fantasy IX. And as
Interesting.
we all know, Final Fantasy IX is a very special game in my heart. It is bringing back the old creators in which they are discussing aspects of the creation of these games. The videos are all subtitled because all these people are Japanese. But if you have any interest in looking at how an old game is built or insight into it, it is absolutely fascinating. I highly recommend diving into it. There's
I will be checking that out.
Yeah, there's one video so far. This is going to be a series, so I'm very excited about it. Especially considering, fun fact, I'm going to throw this in there right now. This is the only Final Fantasy developed on American soil using a Japanese studio and American individuals. They actually went to Hawaii and had a studio in Hawaii because that's the closest point between the two.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
very cool.
That is cool.
In the video, one of the developers points out that they actually had a suntan, like pretty bad suntan, and so when they asked for more resources, the home office was like, "No, you guys are having a lot of fun. Look how tan you are. We're not giving you anybody." So they had to do the game without more resources. Just an example of some of the tidbits you can find in that wonderful video.
Ridiculousness, actually.
Moving on to the question of the week. It took me a minute to find this one because I had nothing prepared, but that's okay. I have an interesting question. Would you rather live 1 week in the future or in the past? And I'm not saying like fast forward
And
a
then you're
week.
dead.
I'm saying you have a week to live in a time frame
and you come right back to your own time frame.
to the past or the future. Anywhere in your past, not your personal past. Anywhere in the future, not your personal future.
Future.
Where? Obviously, you can't predict the future. So just like
No,
a general.
Where do you want to be if you do go to the
Just
future?
because it is still the explosiveness of what it is, I'd want to put myself out on a West Coast.
Okay.
Silicon Valley, Los Angeles, San Fran, even like those kind of areas, the tech central areas, because
Okay.
that's where my brain is. That's where I enjoy to be. That's what I enjoy to do.
How far ahead?
I'd put myself probably 10 years.
Interesting. Okay.
So there's a lot of things that we're kind of on the cusp of.
Well, that
Good
way
at-
he
good-
could bet on it.
I do like the fact that you go ahead 10 years. It's just a smoldering pile of rubble. What happened?
No. But that's the thing. It could be a smoldering pile of rubble.
You're not wrong.
North Korea really could come after us, but
Yeah.
or it could be a complete utopia of or
Oh,
a
yeah.
complete technology or technological utopia of okay, automation's finally taken over. Like self-driving cars are definitely a thing now, or
Yeah.
maybe we're still caught in legal trouble of old heads in government still don't want to I guess accept new ideas to things or I can't even like the future's hard to predict but that uncertainty would be kind of cool to see, to be able to have that and experience that, I guess, even now and be able to draw the hard line from now until then. Because I feel like if you go to the past, like don't get me wrong, big strides have been made anyway between now and what we've experienced in the past. But the future, the strides get bigger over the time frame anyway as we just progress in time.
Yeah.
Because we take bigger leaps, we take bigger risks on a lot of things.
Okay.
Although we do run short on some things, but the idea is you find a new avenue to explore.
Interesting. Okay. I like it.
Like we could all live on Mars.
We could all live on Mars. Thank you, Mr. Musk.
Yeah.
How about you there, Johnny Petite?
That is super difficult because there's so many. All right, one, it's in the past.
He already looks like Stonewall Jackson,
Do
so
you
he might
need-
want to go back that far.
Do you need time to think about it?
The problem is I am having trouble picking a time period because I love so many different ones.
But no problem picking his nose.
That's why I'm asking. Do you
I'm
need
picking my nose.
do you need time? Because I have two answers.
You go for it.
1920s, fall,
Ooh,
New York City
interesting.
You want
want-
to see the Great Depression?
/ speakeasies.
Okay.
God, I just want to go into a real life speakeasy.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Or
Do
in
you want to go to
Prohibition.
1929 or do you want to be?
No, it'll be earlier than that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
like-
you're not going to see the Great Depression.
Yeah, I'll
yet.
miss the Great Depression. And a majority
I
of
was
the
saying, you're
US
cynical.
Yeah. I want to be there on Black
I want to
Friday.
see you jumping out them windows.
Black Monday, whatever it is.
God.
Saying you want to go
much-
back to
No,
like World War One, back in the trenches,
The
Yeah.
aesthetic of that time period is something that you know me very well. I am drawn to so much. I love that aesthetic of the speakeasy down in the cellar.
He's a renegade.
the flapper dancers, the music, just drinking like the simple cocktails because it's all you can make. I love all of that so much.
Interesting. Okay.
The enjoyment of something that is considered evil in others' eyes.
The thrill of doing something illegal
It's not even
on a larger scale.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but it's not just that because it is.
You love Boardwalk Empire, so let's put it that way.
I do love Boardwalk Empire, but obviously I love alcohol. I'm on the show. I enjoy alcohol quite a bit, and so the opportunity to drink alcohol in a
We got plenty left.
area or time period in which it's not allowed and it's something I thoroughly enjoy, I would love. The other one is probably. I'm trying to. I need to look it up, but the rise of the jazz era in Harlem. I don't know what time period that is explicitly. No, I was hoping
Well,
you'd
you
bring
put it away.
rise of
touch it.
jazz. I'm gonna have to Google.
What
while
show is
we
this
talk.
again?
Boardwalk Empire is the show that he was.
No, he was talking to me.
No. He's like, I thought you were done. I was like, what show is this?
Check that far down.
Rumor has it. Woo woo. Okay, so yeah, jazz was in the 1920s, so we're good. Yeah.
That song you were just singing was definitely not part of it. But
No,
sure.
it wasn't.
No.
But that means I could also stroll over to Harlem and enjoy some nice jazz. Like all of that.
I
to
don't
me,
recommend that.
You
in
probably get some
1920,
dirty
I'll be
looks.
fine. I'll be fine.
Okay.
I hate to break it to you, 1920s white males perfectly fine pretty much anywhere they want to go.
That's
cool.
You're not wrong. But at the same time, all the same, just
Yeah, I know. I thoroughly that aesthetic is something that I quite enjoy.
I didn't know we could have multiple answers.
It's technically the same answer. It just all came together.
Yeah. Information is power. So I am struggling between World War II
Okay.
and the Civil War.
Where in World War II?
World War II would be specifically in France as it was being taken over.
Interesting. Why is that?
My heritage is from France.
Petite.
Petite. And also the way that they were, how things had been attacked, how they infiltrated, the things that were destroyed, things that were preserved.
Can
Do
we?
you want to be there in the beginning, or do you want to be after?
In the very beginning, I want to see it
you
actually
want to see
happening.
be on the receiving end of Blitzkrieg, basically.
Well, I mean, like I'm talking about like flying.
You
on
only,
wall
you only get
stuff.
1 week. Remember?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
Can we talk about you calling me a cynical motherfucker for going to Black Monday, and you're like, let me go to World War II or the Civil War?
Well, the Civil War. It's difficult because there are certain battles that are like I feel that have been grandiose. You know, between Gettysburg or Appomattox or Antietam.
Yeah.
I wanted to see those and how they actually
Interesting.
turned out. Did the general really have all the smarts, or was their luck really poured into it? Like, I just wanted to see guerrilla warfare with the old weapons actually being like used. I know it sounds really messed up. You're watching people die.
No.
They're already dead. It doesn't matter. Those things are going to happen. You're watching history as you would a TV
I
show.
find
Well,
this
you said World War
fascinating.
II, not World War One, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah. No.
I was gonna say
because
if you put if you were going for France, the two of them worked almost the same way. Oh, everyone fights in rows and we shoot guns and we're all in bright red and blue. Why not?
I do find this interesting because you have specific touch points you want to see, whereas Mark and I, we're going for the everyday in a specific time period.
Yeah. I like. Well, when I was in school, I kind of like had an affinity for certain time points.
Mm-hmm.
So when we learned about something, it was always about a specific time period or or a specific event. So it was that's where I kind of learned how to think in that way.
Okay.
Where you guys are much more like, macro. You just think about like, this is what I want to experience. This is what I want to see. I'm like, I want to see this specific thing unfold because no one else is ever going to be able to see it. No one else is ever going to know how it went for real. Like that is like the moment in time. And also, to be honest, like there's also part of me that's like, the signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
How they actually conglomerated together. How did that actually work out? And it didn't happen all in one day. This was over multiple days. Actually, I think it was actually multiple weeks. They were waiting for people to come in and sign it, stuff like that. And it would be very interesting to watch something of that magnitude, of that importance being looked at when they didn't even know it themselves.
It's really funny you say that because there are things in our own American history that I appreciate but have little interest in witnessing.
Agreed.
But something like watching not the movie, but like the last actual samurai
Yeah.
resigning himself to the imperial army, like the imperial body, the shogunate, giving up the blade is something that I think would be super fascinating.
It
Like,
would be crazy. Yeah.
those kinds of touch points, or like you talked about World War I, the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. Like
Yeah.
that, not that I want to watch somebody die, but like that touch point in history is something that I would find fascinating because the global ramifications.
But even like the final takeover of Berlin with Adolf
Yeah.
Hitler, you know, that would be amazing to even picture as like
Yeah.
some troop on the ground finally going in and finding him
Yeah,
as he's already killed himself.
or
something.
even even something arguably minor compared to what we're talking, but still interesting, like the falling, like the Berlin Wall coming down.
I'm also assuming that you were an observer, that you cannot interact.
Correct. Yeah, I believe that's also things. We don't also need to talk about the superbugs we're bringing back to the past. Like
Yeah.
that's my first thought. I was like, we're creating your dystopian future. We're just gonna wipe everything out.
Exactly.
But let us know what you
Yeah.
think. Where'd you go? This is a very
Dude, be
robust
totally
question.
honest. If you want to see 9/11,
Yeah.
let us know.
Yeah.
Like, you want to actually see the planes hit the towers. Unfortunately,
know-
that is a thing that happened. But you know what? A lot of people
Exactly.
wish they saw it unhindered too.
Absolutely. You know,
For themselves.
whatever your response is, leave it in the comments above. I apologize for the long show, but I hope
Below.
you enjoyed
Comments
it
below.
nonetheless. And we are happy hour.
Yeah.
Cheers.
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 Kanpai.
Kanpai indeed.
Mm.
Wouldn't let you get that one in, motherfucker. Below my ass.